Airline Pilot Guy, episode 164.
Flight 209er, you are cleared for takeoff.
Roger.
LA departure frequency 123.9.
Roger. Request detected.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1507 in the Tampa Hilton. And joining me today from Amsterdam is Miami Rick.
Hey everybody! I arrived from Studio 736 at the NH Museum Porter in Amsterdam.
Ooh, nice. You'll have to tell us more about that, but I need to keep doing this intro. So, in this episode, hacking airplanes, gear up landing, spilled coffee, more news, and feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 164 is ready for pushback. There's my hokey music, which I like. Thank you very much. Hello, and
hokey.
Yeah, I like it. So, if you well, tell us, Miami Rick, where are you? You're not in Miami.
No, I'm not in Miami. You should call me Amsterdam Rick.
Amsterdam Rick. Okay, there's a hint.
No, we actually, I flew in here, well, about 2 hours ago, 2.5 hours ago, landed here in Amsterdam, and day one of a 7-day trip. I'll be here today, tomorrow, then I'm off to Brazil, then I'm off to Colombia, and then finally to Miami. Just joining Captain Jeff once again, right seat in here, flight 164. Looking forward to it.
I'm happy that you were able to join me, and after flying all night long, he's still with us, and that's great. Now, if he starts nodding off, we'll know why. So
I'll just butt my head into the microphone.
So you're on day 1 of 7. I'm on day 2 of 3, and as I said, I'm in Tampa and got in a little bit earlier today and did some final touches to some of the stuff we're going to talk about on today's show. Now, I have something that I'd like to... Oh, by the way, we're recording again using Google Hangouts, and sent out a tweet just a little while ago, and several people are with us in the Google Hangouts chat room. And I'm not going to mention names because I'll probably mess up and forget somebody, and I don't want anybody to have their feelings hurt. So, but anyway, big group of people there in the chat room. They're having fun, and... So if you want to watch us in the future, just kind of make sure that you're signed up for Miami_Rick. That's his Twitter address, and I'm Airline Pilot Guy. And so if you happen to watch your Twitter stream during the day while you're at work or whatever, maybe one of these days you can watch us record live. And this video will be on YouTube, at least until they take it down because of all the copyrighted stuff that I play. So hopefully we'll cross our fingers and hopefully we'll have this on for a while. Okay. I have some big news. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of big news. I'm excited about it. I think I mentioned in a previous show that I'm having some Acme Airlines merchandise made up. And in the future, that's going to include things you can wear, like T-shirts and hoodies and that kind of thing that I print myself. But in the meantime, since my mug printing device is not working very well, I went ahead and used a third-party company to create some coffee mugs and some pint glasses with the new etched logo by Jim Mercado out there in Southern California. Met him at our San Jose meetup last year. And was it last year or was it even longer than that? I think it was earlier last year. But anyway, regardless, Jim created a super great Acme Airlines logo, and that will be etched on the pint glass and also printed on the coffee mug. And I'll try to remember to put some photos, some pictures of that on the website so you can take a look and see what they're going to look like. I think with the cost of printing them from this other company and then the cost of shipping them, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to ship these internationally yet. I think it's going to be a possibility, but I have to check out how much it's going to cost and all that kind of stuff. but I'm thinking that it's going to cost around $20, including shipping. So stay tuned for that. And so that was my big news about APG Acme Airlines merchandise. I'm really looking forward to the pint glass to drink my nice IPA in. And, of course, my coffee for the coffee fund. And speaking of that,
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the Java Jive. It loves me. So, the Airline Pilot Guy Coffee Fund is a way for you to contribute to the show if you so desire. Now, again, I need to reiterate that, number one, I am not a nonprofit corporation, so this is not tax deductible. And the second thing is what was I going to say? Well, I don't remember what the second thing. Oh, if you do not have the funds to contribute to the coffee fund, then don't. Okay, don't do it. So only if you have some extra cash lying around in your pockets, you can participate in the coffee fund. And let's see here. Let me turn the volume down a little bit for that. And since the last episode, using the Coffee Fund Classic method, we have Billy Batty, or Beatty, Mickelson Diamonds. I'm not sure who that, I think I looked that up before. I forgot to look it up again. I'm sorry, whoever that is. And BG Husbands, Philip Daly, and Ron's Television Services. Now, Rick is saying that this has frozen. So, let's see. Oh, he's gone. Let me see here. Now, those of you in the chat room, do you still see me? There's a little bit of a lag there, so I'm going to wait for somebody to type in whether or not I'm still on the air. I think I am. Just a little technical difficulty we're having right now. I'll wait for you to answer. Okay, good. Yeah, okay, now I see everybody answering. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we lost Miami Rick. So hopefully he can get back with us. Let me send him a message here. So that's one of the problems with doing this live. Are you able, if you're listening, the people that are going to be listening to this on the audio version are not going to hear any of this because I'll delete it. Able to reconnect.
Gotcha.
Oh, I hear something. Hey,
I'm back.
There he is. What happened?
I'm sorry about that. I don't know. It just kicked me offline here for some reason. That's weird. I have to log back on again and all.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. I'm wondering if the web service providers or whatever you call them over there like sense that you're using something like this and they go, okay, that's enough bandwidth for you. We're going to give it to somebody else. You know what? If that happens again, I will probably switch us over to Skype. Now, the downside of that, of course, is that the people that are watching via Google Hangouts will not be able to watch the show live, but you'll be able to watch it after the fact.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry about that.
Hey, it's not your fault. That's just what happens when you end up trying to do things like this in hotel rooms, like I always do. That's really one of the reasons why I don't do this live, because I realize that bandwidth at hotels sometimes is not really up to snuff. And so,
yeah.
Anyway, all right. So, looks like I was asking everybody in the chat room if I was still broadcasting, and about, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds later, finally everybody started. You can see by looking at the chat. Well, maybe not. Anyway, they chimed in and said yes, it froze for a bit, but it's back on. Okay, so maybe I should go back and start with the coffee fund. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay. So, we're just talking about merchandise and coffee mugs, and speaking of coffee, let's talk about the coffee fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
Okay, the coffee fund is your way to get more involved in this show if you have the resources to do so. And so, number one, it's not tax deductible. I'm not a charitable contribution. I'm not a charitable organization. And secondly, if you don't have the resources to contribute to the show, then don't. Okay? So if you're a student saving your money for flying lessons or whatever, I don't want your stinking money. I want you to spend it on yourself. Okay? So, since the last show, people that use the Airline Pilot Guy Coffee Fund Classic payment method, PayPal, were recurring payment from Billy Batty, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, a donation from Mickelson Diamonds, BG Husbands, Philip Daly, and Ron's Television Services. I think that's LCD. What's his name, Rick?
That's Ron over in the UK.
All right, I thought so.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so thank you, each and every one of you, for your contribution to the Classic Coffee Fund. And also, I have two new patrons. We have Richard Stratman and Short Baker. So I hope that I'm doing justice to pronouncing your name. That looks like maybe a Dutch name, Sjoert Bakker. So I know it's not an American name, so I hope I didn't mangle it. Anyway, so thank you very much for becoming patrons of the Airline Pilot Guy show. And with that, we'll turn the Java Jive off. By the way, that's the Ink Spots, recorded in 1940. And it is now time for the news. Okay, now, I'm sure that many of you have seen all the numerous articles in the news regarding this subject. And apparently back in February or March, the United States GAO, the Governmental Accounting Organization, I think that's what that stands for, put out a report about security measures and concerns regarding the National Airspace System and the FAA and air traffic control, and also airplanes. And many of you sent in many different links, and so I'm going to try to cover all of them as best I can in this particular segment. And let's see, who sent this one in first? Mark Lebrowski said, aren't you glad you're driving older technology? And he says, I'm sure these systems are tested to the nth degree, but it's possible that the more complex these systems get, the more vulnerable they become. And this is from an article in a local Fox affiliate. GAO, newer commercial aircraft are vulnerable to hacking. And hundreds of planes flying commercially today could be vulnerable to having their onboard computers hacked and remotely taken over by someone using the plane's passenger Wi-Fi network. I don't believe that. Or even by someone on the ground. According to a new report from the Government Accountability Office. Oh, there it is right there. Government Accountability Office. And so let's see. One of the authors of the report, Gerald Dillingham, told CNN that the planes, including the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, the Airbus 350 and 380, have advanced cockpits that are wired into the same Wi-Fi system used by passengers. I don't think so. Anyway, the government investigators who wrote the report said it's theoretically possible for someone who just has a laptop to 1. Commandeer the aircraft, 2. Put a virus into flight control computers, 3. Jeopardize the safety of the flight by taking control of computers, 4. Take over the warning systems or even navigation systems. The GAO report does not draw a roadmap on how this could be done. Now, according to commercial pilot John Barton, he told CNN, "We've had hackers get into the Pentagon, so getting into an airplane computer system I would think is probably quite easy at this point." Now, you wonder what qualifications that Captain John Barton, I'm sure he's a really nice guy, John, if you're listening, my bad, but you have a degree in biology, not...
Oh, really? That's what his degree.
Yeah,
that's what his degree's on.
Yeah, but he is an expert because he is a commercial pilot. So, I'm not saying maybe he is an expert in this, but I did a little research to see what kind of background he has to kind of be making these kind of statements. Anyway, it says another way a hacker could get access to a plane's computers is through a physical connection, and notes that whenever there's a physical linkage, like a USB plug in a passenger seat, if those wires are linked in any way to the airplane's avionics, that linkage creates a vulnerability. Experts told investigators if the cabin systems connect to the cockpit avionics systems and use the same networking platform, in this case IP, Internet Protocol, a user could subvert the firewall and access the cockpit avionics system from the cabin. A source briefed on the report tells CNN that cybersecurity experts say these vulnerabilities exist and these scenarios are possible, but it is unclear how far the GAO went to test any of these possible scenarios. In the report, the GAO does not say whether this is based on actual testing or just theoretical mock-ups. So we have that. And then Kevin St. John writes, is this a case of here we go again, or is it a real threat? And then they talk about the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and the 350 and 380 Airbus models. Again, the same quote, have Wi-Fi passenger networks that use the same network as the avionics systems of the planes. Okay, again, I'm finding that really, really hard to believe that there's any connection between you using an IFE, an in-flight entertainment system, and somehow bridging that gap into anything that we use in the cockpit. And a big, much larger stretch for me is the control system of the airplane. I mean, it's one thing to maybe hack into communications that we have with our company or ATC or whatever, but to actually be able to hack in and control the ailerons and the elevator and all the critical control surfaces of the airplane. If that's true, then we got big problems. But
yeah, I don't even see how that could be, physically possible. I mean, these systems are. I mean, even the entertainment system works off of what's called the auxiliary electrical bus, or the what's it called, the galley power and all that stuff. That stuff's not connected to any aircraft system at all.
I know.
So nope, it's not happening.
I have a feeling that it's one of these things where these people that are maybe they have expertise in certain areas, but in this area I don't think they do, or maybe they're technologists or people that know a lot about computers and technology and networks and everything, but don't quite understand exactly how the systems work on an airplane and how they integrate with each other or don't integrate. But anyway, so just a few days after a lot of these reports came out, this gentleman, Chris Roberts, who is a noted, he is founder and chief technology officer of the security research firm One World Labs, who has been issuing warnings about the security vulnerabilities of commercial planes for years. And on the very eve of his alarming tweet, which read, Let me see. Let me scroll down here. I find myself on a 737-800. Let's see. box-ife.ice-satcom? Question mark. Shall we start playing with the EICAS, the ICAS messages? And then he puts pass oxygen on anyone, which means passenger oxygen. In other words, he's basically saying in this tweet that he can hack into the system and actually lower the oxygen masks. And so he was flying into, where was he going? Syracuse, I believe, for some kind of a security. He was doing some kind of a presentation, I think. Anyway, the FBI met him after he landed on his United flight and took him away. So that was an article from Gizmodo, and then go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, what do you expect? You start playing with stuff like that. I mean, you're going to get burned. That's playing with fire. You don't know.
Yeah, he was pulled off a plane in Syracuse, New York, and questioned by the FBI, apparently over concerns that he attempted to hack into critical systems aboard a United flight. And so, let's see. All these articles, by the way, I'll have links to in the show notes if you want to read them yourself. An ICAS refers to the engine indicating and crew alerting system. Critical in-flight systems. Well, I wouldn't say that's critical in-flight system. It's a system that alerts us to problems with our systems, but it's not like if you break into the ICAS system, you're not going to be controlling the airplane. But and I don't believe you could actually get into that system anyway. So the article goes on about the FBI agents coming on, and they passed him up in his row, and he goes, "Are you looking for me?" So it was almost like he was hoping that they would take him off the airplane and question him. And then later he tried to board a United Airlines flight back home, and United Airlines basically banned him from flying on their airline. I wonder why. So, and then another related article, in interconnected systems on Boeing and Gulfstream jets concern the FAA, and again, it's the same old stuff we've been just talking about. And then finally, I've saved the best for last. Okay, so we have an article from somewhere I didn't write down. Let's see where it is here. Maybe I can find it. It's from... No, I don't know where it was from. But anyway, this is talking about the U.S. government claims of plane Wi-Fi hacking wrong and irresponsible. And that was just published 2 days ago on the 20th. The U.S. government released a report yesterday warning of security threats facing modern aircraft, leading to stories from major publications claiming in-flight Wi-Fi could be hacked to take control of a passenger plane. But according to Dr. Phil Polstra, a qualified pilot and professor of digital forensics at Bloomsburg University, the report contained much erroneous information. Polstra believes the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the GAO, report was put together by people who didn't understand how modern aircraft actually work. He took umbrage with the claims that as airplanes are increasingly connected to the internet, the control systems on planes are in danger of being remotely compromised. He told Forbes, that's where this is from, Forbes, over email, that the avionics networks which deal with flight controls and coordination were simply not connected to the internet, like Wi-Fi services. To imply this is irresponsible, he said. While modern aircraft do use standardized internet connections over Ethernet and IP addresses sending data to one another, there is no real threat to passenger safety from sky-high Wi-Fi hacks. To imply that, because IP is used for in-flight Wi-Fi and also on the avionics networks, means that you can automatically take over the avionics network, makes about as much sense as saying you can take over the jet engines because they breathe air like the passengers, and there's no air gap between passengers who touch the plane and the engines which are attached to the plane. So in other words, you're trying to make a point that you can't make that jump. So he said the GAO report, based largely on interviews with security experts, also indicated if the cabin systems connect to the cockpit avionics systems, in other words, if they share the same physical wiring harness or router and use the same networking platform, in this case IP, a user could subvert the firewall and access the cockpit avionics system from the cabin. Polstra said that's a big if, and isn't how current in-flight networks actually work. And he said the information passed on to the in-flight entertainment system is via something called a NED, a network extension device. This device is not a router. This is a device that must be programmed to pass certain information to the entertainment system. It's one-way communication. Even if someone were able to send information back toward the avionics, they aren't listening for that information from the IFE. Since the computer doesn't try and read information on those wires, it's likely not to be useful to an attacker. And he goes on and saying how kind of irresponsible this whole thing was. And so there you have it. What do you think, Rick?
Well, I mean, you can rest easy at night, not thinking about, you flying coast to coast and 47F and taking control of the airplane. That stuff just does not happen. There's no physical way to connect any kind of computer and interact in any way whatsoever with any of the aircraft systems, any critical systems, any flight controls. That is science fiction, guys. It's not happening.
And speaking of science fiction, you're sounding like a robot. I'm wondering if Rick is a robot. It's our internet connections, and it could be his, it could be mine, it could be both of them combined. Who knows? But we got the gist of what you're saying, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he's laughing. I'm not sure.
Does Matt's laughing?
Let's see. Tony in the chat room says, could it be possible to send fake CPDLC/ACARS messages? And I guess that would be. It's possible that could happen, but again, the thing is, it's not like the messages that we receive via CPDLC and ACARS are things that aren't automatically entered and executed. I mean, it still requires a human, a pilot, to analyze the communication and decide whether or not that's makes sense to execute. There are some computer systems, I guess probably the 777 that you fly, Rick, where you can receive a clearance like that and it probably just automatically or a flight plan change, and if you execute it, then it will be part of the navigation, routing, and that kind of thing, right?
Right. I mean, you don't only need to execute it, but when you get let's say like today when we crossed the pond, we got our oceanic clearance via CPDLC, and CPDLC stands for Controller Pilot Direct Link Communication, and it's kind of ATL. Send you that you need to do two things. The first thing you need to do is right, and then once you accept it, you get a prompt on the lower screen to transfer that information onto your FMC, your flight management computer. So there's a two-step there. It's not like anybody can just send you a route and then load it up automatically. Have the airplane have to first accept the message, and then you have to load it on the FMC, and then you have to execute it for it to be flown by the aircraft. So, yeah, I mean, it's for layers of protection there.
Okay, very good. Hey, do me a favor, Rick. Go to the settings and see if you can adjust your bandwidth usage. It's like the third one from the right, the bars, and like slide it down. I don't know. You're probably on automatic. Maybe slide it to medium, which limits your bandwidth a little bit.
Medium. There we go.
That might help. And
there's medium there. Is that better?
Yes, so far. Because you're really...
Oh,
start talking.
let me go to low.
Okay.
Let me go to low here.
Okay.
Hang on. There we go.
All right.
Better?
Yeah. So far.
Or your call. We can just do Skype if you want.
I'd like to keep it going so that the people that are watching us right now live or listening to us live can stay there, because then if we go to Skype, then they're going to be completely cut out. So we'll just keep on going.
Yeah, no, we don't want to do
this
that
way. Okay, we'll see. We'll see how that works. But much of what you just said, I caught the gist of what you were saying, but it was because I kind of knew what you were saying. People that are listening to the show that have no idea what we're talking about would be very confused because it was very broken up. Okay, so let's see. Let me get back here to the notes. Yeah, we may have to switch over to Skype. Talk. That's not good. I don't hear anything.
So, no, you can't hear me?
It's like every other word.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we gave it a shot. We did. Okay. Well, I hope you guys don't mind that are watching us on the Google Hangout, but I think it may actually be my bandwidth. Actually, looking at the video that I'm sending to the Hangout, it looks pretty bad. So, yeah. In fact, it's so bad that sometimes my video image is gone completely. So, yeah. I hate to do this, but hey, thanks for hanging out with us, guys, in the in the chat room. And unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to the rest of the show via the recorded video / recorded audio. I'm sorry about that. I really am. So maybe next time we'll have better bandwidth and give it another try. So signing off from sunny Tampa, Florida, and cold, rainy Amsterdam. We'll see you again. I do apologize. Okay, so I stopped, and so let's go back to Skype. That was much better.
Yeah, my video is pretty spot on, actually.
Yeah, it's probably my bandwidth, not yours.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay.
I hear you. Now you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Let's. It says failed to stop broadcast. Please try again. We're still broadcasting. Okay. I'm gonna hit stop broadcast. Okay.
There we go. Off air now.
It's my bandwidth apparently. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm going to go ahead and close this Hangout, and then I'm going to call you on Skype.
Okay, let's do that.
All right.
Hello?
Hello.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I thought it was my bandwidth for a second.
You know, I did too, but then the more I started thinking about it, I'm thinking it's much more likely that it's the hotel here, because this is the free bandwidth that they give us, which is pretty pitiful, actually. Okay, well, I guess we'll just we'll do the Hangouts on air when we know that we both have good bandwidth.
Yeah.
So, oh well. Okay, bad choice on my part, but at least we got a little bit of participation from people out there.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to start a new recording, and so that'll let me know that this is beginning the better part. Okay, back on. Okay, now, let's see, where do we want to pick up? I know that I wasn't getting, from my end, hearing you talking about the CPDLC and the ACARS stuff, and not you were explaining that it takes a couple actions before it's actually accepted, etc.
Right.
Okay, so let's see here. So I'm going to basically say, so what do you think about all this, Rick? Okay. So what do you think about all this, Rick?
Okay, so well, basically, and we can kind of use what happened on my flight today. The CPDLC, which basically stands for Controller Pilot Direct Link Communication. It's kind of like ATC sending you an email, and basically what that does is instead of using the old the old school HF high frequency radios, you get a message from ATC on your multifunction display, one of the screens in the flight deck. And then you get, like today, we got our oceanic clearance from Gander that way. So you need a human, a controller downstairs setting the stuff up to you. And then once the airplane receives it, then it's a two-step verification process, because you first need to accept the message, right? and then you need to execute it. So it's not like somebody with the right equipment can just send up an oceanic clearance or a rerouting or anything like that, and then just have the airplane fly it automatically. You first need to accept it, and then obviously you check it, then you execute it, and then the airplane flies it. So all this stuff about people, with computers and laptops and stuff like that, being able to take control of an aircraft's critical systems, that's just science fiction. That just doesn't happen. So you can rest easy and just do your red-eye flight in peace.
Now, if you're riding on an airplane like mine with 30-year-old technology or more.
Yeah, then you lug around the thing of coal and then a shovel.
It's not quite that ancient, but we don't even have in-flight entertainment systems on the Mad Dogs that we fly at Acme, but we do have internet. And trust me, that internet is completely disconnected from anything to do with controlling the airplane, because I'm controlling the airplane using a control yoke that is actually connected with pulleys and cables and everything else to the flight control surfaces. So I don't have to worry about anybody taking over, flying my airplane for me. Thank goodness. So anyway, I think we've beaten that dead horse, long enough, don't you?
I think so. I think we can put this one to rest.
Okay. Well, this is kind of related. An Airbus official, actually the chief of Airbus's jetliner division, on Friday of last week cautioned against downgrading the role of pilots in flying airliners in the wake of the Germanwings plane crash. Let's see. Deutsche Flugsicherung, the German air traffic controller, this week said it was developing a system that could take over the controls of an aircraft in case of an emergency and put it on a program course for safe landing. The Airbus jetliner division leader, Mr. Berger, told reporters having pilots in the loop will still have a critical role in assuring aircraft security, and also warned that hasty decisions by regulators in such situations could backfire. Airbus also was working on upgrades to its aircraft to reduce the occurrence of onboard sensor malfunctions. Now that's something that is very important.
Yes.
The pitot tubes, you might remember this flight in 2009 that crashed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, Air France 447. The pitot tubes basically got clogged with ice and momentarily interrupted the airspeed indications and the data sent to the computers, and that caused the autoflight system to kick off. And if you've listened to my show, we've talked about this many times. And the problem there, well, that was the problem. That was the thing that set off the chain of events. But the biggest problem is that the pilots, the humans at the controls, didn't know what to do with that situation and basically crashed the airplane. By the way, many, many instances of this happening had occurred prior to that Air France 447 tragedy and have happened afterwards as well. And all of those crews, we might add, knew what to do in the situation. They understood what the proper attitude of the airplane should be up at that altitude and weight, and what power setting would be appropriate, and waited for everything to, fix itself, or at least, come back and have some realistic indications, and everything never really got back to normal, but they were able to fly the airplane without a problem and land it, and we didn't really hear about any of those instances in the news because guess what? It wasn't newsworthy.
Right.
So that was the critical component of the Air France 447 disaster, possibly the Air Asia incident over the Java Sea. That might also be related to this. We're not sure yet. They're still investigating it. But there have been other events related to pitot tubes icing up and such. So I'm glad that Airbus has recognized that that is a problem, and they're doing their best to kind of come up with newer pitot tube technology to install in their airplanes so we don't have to worry about this kind of thing in the future. Okay, and then the last thing that he says in the article, which I highlighted here, Rick, pilots should be able to recover planes that encounter such conditions, though that hasn't always been the case. And the European Aviation Safety Agency this week issued a safety alert to pilots to remind them how to recover from such situations.
It's interesting you mentioned that because, well, I have I think you guys
Hey, Rick?
know this. I step.
Hey, Rick? Can you hear me? Rick?
I'm doing my. Do you hear me?
I haven't heard you in the last 30 seconds.
Hello.
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like...
What happened?
I don't know what's going on. I know what I can try. I can try using my iPhone and using that as a hotspot. Maybe that will be better than the hotel Wi-Fi.
Well, that Wi-Fi is really, really bad, huh?
Yeah, I mean, am I breaking up when you're listening to me?
A little bit.
Okay. Man, let me do a quick test here to see what kind of bandwidth I'm getting. Speedtest.com. .net, I'm sorry, speedtest.net. Yeah, basically when you started talking, it just like, I wasn't hearing any. I have no idea what you just said. Are you talking now?
That Wi-Fi doesn't like me. I think. Yeah, I'm. Do you,
I can
do you
hear
not hear me?
I can hear you now. Okay, let me do it. I'm gonna do a test here, so I'll probably not be here the whole time. It's selecting the best. It thinks I'm in Oklahoma. That might be the problem. So I'm getting, oh, look at this. This is an incredible download speed of 1.2, 1.1 megabits per second down. And yeah, that could definitely be the problem. And let's see what the speed is up. Okay, the up is probably going to be a lot worse. Yeah, that's the problem. 0.5.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hang up, and I'm going to switch over to my phone's hotspot and see if we can get better results. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Sorry about this, Rick.
No, I'll be right here. Don't worry.
Okay. Bye.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. So now I'm getting, I just did a speed test using my phone. I'm getting almost 12 megabits per second down and 12 up.
Yeah, I'm getting 12 and a half on mine and down, and I'm getting 10.2 up.
So we have basically the same bandwidth now that I'm using my personal hotspot on my phone. Okay. And I don't have a lot of battery remaining on my iPhone 5 that I'm using for the video, so we'll keep trudging along. This might be a two-parter.
It might be a two-parter.
Yeah.
Might be recorded in Amsterdam and in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, when are you going to be in Sao Paulo?
I leave tomorrow afternoon, so day after tomorrow.
Day after tomorrow.
Oh,
That's,
wait.
Friday?
It can be a two-parter.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll play it by ear. Okay. So, I apologize for this. Technology is so wonderful and so frustrating at the same time. Okay. So, basically, you were saying, talking about the I think I ended it with the European Aviation Safety Agency said it's going to issue a safety alert to pilots to remind them how to recover from such situations. And then you went on into something.
Yeah, I was saying that just basically it's good because now on the curriculum for my recurrent at the end of the month, which I told you guys I had a recurrent at the end of the month last show, they are requiring a lot more hand flying. It used to be that it was just basically, take off, engage autopilot, and then fly the ILS down to minimums and then, disconnect and land. But now the curriculum actually calls for doing a lot of the flying manually, which is good, because that you keep your skills sharp.
Absolutely. Hey Rick, you watch and follow me on Twitter, right, and Facebook.
Yes, I do.
Did you happen to see that tweet that I just put out yesterday? I think I saw it on FlightAware.com. They send me a little news blurb every morning, and they had a video of a Piper 601 Aerostar coming in for a landing or a touch and go or something at Aero Acres Airport in Fort Pierce, Florida.
Ooh, yes.
Did you see that?
That was kind of embarrassing.
That was very painful to watch, and we'll put the link to that YouTube video in the show notes if you want to watch this guy come in with his Piper Aerostar twin-engine airplane and didn't have the gear down, and the props, so he's sliding down the runway, and you can even hear the props hitting the runway. It's just very painful to hear. And so you're thinking, well, he's just going to pull the power off and skid to a stop and think, that was pretty bad. I shouldn't have done that. No, he doesn't do that. He cobs the power in and powers out of it and ends up actually flying. It looks like he almost stalls the airplane a little bit. And then he actually was able to fly to another airport and land.
That was a maneuver right there. Wow, how did he manage to fly away? What happened to the props? What happened to the engine? What happened to all that stuff?
Well, if you look at the update to this post, again, it'll be in the show notes. One of the readers or whatever said, "Hey, I think I know where that Aerostar is based, and I know exactly what the tail number is on it." And they showed a picture of it parked at its home with very bent, curled back props, and apparently it's for sale.
Really, it's for sale.
It says recently has been listed for sale with the disclaimer needs props. So I don't know if that's true or not, or somebody just being tongue in cheek. But I did record a little bit of this tail number, and I think this is when he was coming back into wherever he ended up landing. And let's see if I can find it. Do I have it here? I'm not really sure, and the information on liveatc.net is not very clear about when this recording was done, but this is November 7502.
Traffic on 13. Would you abort your landing?
He's in a common traffic advisory frequency. Traffic pattern.
2 Sierras on final for runway 13. Okay, we've got a bit of a problem with we didn't want somebody behind us. Fine, you settle in 13. Okay, 2 Sierras.
Okay, that's all we have on that one. So I guess he's coming into a traffic pattern, and he's asking somebody else that happens to be in the pattern, can you abort your landing because we don't want anybody behind us because we're having a problem with the airplane, a self-induced problem.
My question is, did he put the gear down this time?
I think he did, yeah. I think it was a much better landing this time. Anyway, well, if we hear any more information about this one, we'll certainly update you. But again, you got to watch the video. It's pretty amazing that this guy was able to fly the airplane after he, my advice to you, if you're out there listening, watching, if you're in an airplane, you forget to put the gear down and you touch down, don't try to continue to fly the airplane. Just accept that what you've done is not a good thing, and move on with it. And finally, I was flying yesterday with my first officer for this trip, and he said, "Hey, did you hear about the president of Serbia and his private airplane?" And I said, "No, what?" I'm thinking, I usually hear about all this stuff, and I missed this. The nearly disastrous plunge of the Serbian president's plane Friday, it's a Falcon 50, was the fault of the co-pilot who spilled coffee in the cockpit and accidentally activated an emergency switch, the Serbian Civil Aviation Directorate said in a report published Tuesday. Initially, Serbian officials said that the aircraft carrying President Tomislav Nikolic and 9 others to a meeting with Pope Francis at the Vatican had been sent into a plunge over the Adriatic Sea after one of its 3 engines failed at an altitude of about 33,000 feet. News flash for anybody listening. If you lose an engine, the airplane doesn't plunge out of the sky.
It doesn't.
No.
You just drift down.
Yes. So, but apparently, if you're the co-pilot Bojan Zoric, and you have a cup of coffee and you spilled it on your instrument panel and you start trying to sop up the coffee and you accidentally hit the emergency slat extension, that will send you plunging out of control. And so this act led to the brief shutdown of the 3rd engine, the report said, after about a minute, in which the plane fell about a mile. So I'm assuming that's like 6,000 feet, 5,000 feet. The captain regained control, and the aircraft returned to Belgrade. The party from Serbia had to postpone their meeting with the Pope. According to Stanislava Pak, a presidential advisor who was on the plane, "We were falling like a rock. These 60 seconds felt like an eternity. Our things were flying all over the cabin. I fell on my colleague and then grabbed his hand. It was the most terrifying moment." I don't know if he meant the actual tumbling out of the sky or grabbing his colleague's hand. I'm not sure. But
So, do you think you think the first officer he sang the Jabba Jive all the way back to Belgrade?
probably so. No, I don't think he did. He's probably not a listener of the show, but I think he'll probably have a lot of time off now, though, so he can listen. So if you're listening, Bojar, welcome to the APG community. He apparently, according to this report, has been suspended. And the presidential party will now, in the future, be taking commercial transportation until they have their courage worked up again to fly one of the 2 private airplanes. Again, this was a French-built Dassault Falcon 50, and the other one, and that was a 31-year-old airplane, and the other plane, a smaller Learjet 31A, was built in 1991. Both have experienced serious malfunctions in recent years. So, so that was an interesting coffee spill moment. So I guess it's probably time to... This is for you, Bojar.
You know what I'm thinking? Maybe
What?
those 2 Falcons will be listed for sale with that Piper.
It might be. One slightly used Falcon 50 and one slightly used Piper Aerostar with bent wing or prop tips.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's enough for the news. Let's move on to feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Oh, well, let's see where to start. Why don't we start with this audio feedback from Kathy.
Hi, Captain Jeff. This is Kathy from Illinois. I really enjoy your podcast and want to thank you for providing this for us. I have a question about nosebleeds and flying. I have a nosebleed situation. Does flying aggravate nosebleeds? Do you have any sources where I can find out more information on this? I would appreciate it if you did. Thanks again, Captain Jeff. Bye.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'm now appealing to the APG community, especially those of you out there with, maybe a medical background or know something specifically about nosebleeds and perhaps some resources for Miss Kathy and that nosebleed problem that she has to deal with. And I would say just off the top of my head, probably a couple things that could aggravate nosebleeds in an airplane. Number one, it's because of the air conditioning system is very dry, not a lot of humidity in the airplane. So I know that people that do suffer from nosebleeds do have problems when it's a very dry climate. And secondly, the pressure changes, I'm sure, cannot be a good thing if you are susceptible to frequent nose bleeding. What would you say, Rick?
I would think so as well. You have to remember that it is amazingly dry up there. It gets very, very dry, which is why you have to hydrate quite a bit. And do you think cabin pressure maybe has something to do with it? Or
yeah, I was thinking that might be another thing. The cabin pressure and the arid climate. It's very, very dry. It's drier than the desert, I think I've read somewhere.
It is.
Yeah. Unless you're in a Boeing Dreamliner, and apparently the humidity level in that airplane is higher because they don't have to worry about the higher humidity levels with the metal and corrosion and all that kind of stuff, because there is no metal, because it's all plastic basically, carbon fiber and that kind of thing. So that's what I would say about that. But as far as resources are concerned, Kathy, I wasn't able to find anybody, but my fine listeners, they'll be able to come in with something for you, I'm sure. All right, let's go to First Officer Jeff Felmuth, and he has some feedback. And this was sent in actually before our meetup in Philadelphia last week. And so take it away, Jeff.
Hello, Captain Jeff. It's First Officer Jeff, and I'll start my feedback the way you start your podcast. This is coming to you from the Veranda Resort in Antigua in the Caribbean, room 301.
All right.
Nice.
Where it's presently about 82 degrees, beautiful sunny day. And I'm watching the Masters, actually, while I'm doing this. Just finished up the podcast you did over Skype or Google Hangout with Miami Rick, talking about the hyperbaric chambers and rapid decompressions and hypoxia. And as you know, I'm a retired Air Force pilot, flying for a major carrier now, and I can tell you, I think I went through the chamber 5 or 6 times in my 20 plus years in the service, and I always valued that training. Every time I took advantage of, keeping track of my hypoxia symptoms and what it felt like to me. My symptoms never changed. I always got the same thing. My first inclination that I was getting hypoxic, I would get very flushed, almost feverish kind of feeling, which I used to my advantage when I was doing ocean crossings in the F-15, where our cockpit pressurization would probably have the cockpit up around 18 to 23,000 feet, depending on our altitudes. And you drop the mask to eat your box lunch, in this 8-hour flight. And I'd get that flush feeling and put my mask up for a minute or two, and I'd feel fine again. So I've yet to find a civilian guy that I've flown with at the company who has done any kind of hyperbaric chamber or hypoxia training other than the classroom stuff we get at an initial training. And it's their loss. I think it's something that they probably need to have. It'd be excellent training if they ever had a rapid decompression. I think they would find it surprising. Having had one in the F-15, it was kind of shocking when it happened. The advantage was that I had my oxygen mask on. I was up at 39,000 feet, so time of useful consciousness wasn't a problem, but the issue was pressure breathing. And for those of you who have never done that, it is a surprising experience because the air is being forced into your lungs under high pressure. But what people don't realize, it is passive to exhale. It is an active body motion to inhale, but it's passive to exhale. So when you're pressure breathing, when you go to exhale, you can't, because you're used to just relaxing to exhale. It's a natural thing that we don't even think about. So it's the opposite of what you have to do. So to exhale, you have to force the air out of your lungs, which also makes talking very difficult. So that's an experience that I wish everybody could get. So anyway, that's all I got from here. I'm going to enjoy my nice, warm, sunny day, having left the cold behind up in the Northeast. And cavu to you.
Well, thank you very much, First Officer Jeff, and love the music in the background, taking a cue from CFI Vernon Tryon, having the classical music in the background there, and from Antigua. Is that the way how do you pronounce it, Rick?
Antigua. I think in
Antigua?
Spanish would be Antigua.
Antigua,
Okay. But Antigua. And that was really nice ambiance, actually. I was actually like leaning back in my chair here and just closing my eyes and just picturing the tropical situation going on.
So what do you think? You don't have any military training, right, Rick? So
No,
were you
no
able
military.
to?
I'm all civilian all the way.
Were you able to ever go into a barometric or altitude chamber?
Actually, I never have, and I really, just listening to Jeff's feedback, I kind of wish I had, and I really think that civilian pilots should be exposed to that, because you read about hypoxia, you read about the we talked about this, the tingling and the lips, and your fingernails turning blue and all that stuff, but you don't actually feel what that's like, and I just feel like that's it's an invaluable piece of information, because I imagine that some people initial symptoms are different from others. So I don't know. I mean, I never did, and I wish I had, and I wish I could do that.
I think it's an eye-opening thing, as you said. It's an interesting, and each reaction. I mean, each individual has a different reaction to, the symptoms of hypoxia, et cetera. And it's always good to know what your symptoms are, so that when you start experiencing them, you'll know, and you'll know to get either get that airplane down lower where the air has more oxygen, more partial pressure of oxygen, or put that oxygen mask on if your airplane has one, etc. So anyway, very great feedback, Jeff, and it was good seeing you in Philadelphia. Hope to see you again soon. And boy, we're continuing on the roll with audio feedback. This is before the audio feedback, this subject deals with window shades, and let's see, who was it? Luke sent in a question about window shades, and Luke said that in his part of the world, that all the airlines have you leave the window shades up for takeoff and landing, and Dr. Steph said that window shades up for takeoff or landing is not a requirement here in the United States under the FARs, the Federal Aviation Regulations. However, some individual airlines have adopted it as a rule. Speaking only from personal experience, I know that, at least as of a few years ago, Republic Airways, operating as a regional carrier for U.S. Airways, required the window shades to be up for takeoff and landing as a safety precaution. Makes sense to me, but definitely irritated a few of my fellow passengers. Aw, too bad. Conversely, I've been asked on a different airline to keep the window shades closed while taxiing and until after departure on hot summer days to help control cabin temperature. And again, that's Dr. Stephanie in Charlotte. And, we at Acme, during the warm months, this time of year through the summertime and everything, our flight attendants will make an announcement as we are taxiing in to lower the window shades to keep the cabin cool, but I've never heard of them doing that as we taxi out or, take off and that kind of thing, but that's interesting. And then Tyler Herrick, who is a flight attendant for a major legacy carrier, sent in some audio feedback, so let's listen to Tyler.
Hello, Captain Jeff. Tyler, the flight attendant, just giving you some feedback. Please excuse the background noise, unless, of course, you enjoy the ambience of a coffee shop while I send you this feedback.
I do.
Just wanted to send some feedback regarding the window shades feedback that you had on the previous episode. At my airline, the legacy carrier that I work for in the United States, as mentioned before, it is not an FAA policy to have, the windows up for taxi, takeoff, and landing, or down, or in the open position, if you will. But we do require, as an airline-specific policy, that the window shades in the emergency exit row, as well as the window shades in the doors, like on our Airbus fleet. Specifically, we do have window shades for the doors that the flight attendants use. So we do require that those window shades, as well as emergency exit window shades, are in their open position. Just thought that was a little interesting feedback. I actually had no idea that in other countries that they have to have them up at all time. I believe it's an FAA recommendation. I'll have to cross-check myself on that. But all I know is that it's a company policy that just the emergency exit rows and the flight attendant window shades have to be in the open position for taxi, takeoff, and landing. However, all their window shades don't really matter at our airline. So just thought I'd send you that, and thanks for the great show. Have a great day. Keep them coming.
Well, thank you, Tyler, for another data point. And Rick, on your airline, do you keep the window shades up or down?
Yeah, well, we keep them up for taxi, takeoff, and landing because I believe it's for the same reason that that Tyler just mentioned. I mean, you're talking about the windows on the doors that actually hold the escape slides, and one of the first things, and it's interesting, as a freight dog, as a cargo pilot, you're kind of a one-man band because you do it all, and one of the things that you're actually trained on is on deploying these emergency slides, and the first thing they tell you is, check exterior conditions before doing anything. And how do you do that? You have to look through the window. So that makes perfect sense. To have those open.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. Well, moving on from the United States, now we're moving to Africa and Bhavesh.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Just to add on to my earlier feedback, today's a lucky day, I guess. I just seen pride of young lions. I'll send you one of the pictures. They look like they're going off for a hunt out here to the east, and it's running underneath the approach path. There's another picture I'll send you with the Turkish airline 738 on finals. I guess the animals are used to the noise. And the park, just to add on, the park is sort of southeast of the city of Nairobi. Thanks, Captain Jeff. That's all. Good day.
Thank you, Bhavesh. So I guess I should have read, he kind of sent me two parts there, and I stuck the audio at the beginning. And the first feedback he gave me, he said, quality entertainment on the unusual commute. And he has a picture that he sent of him driving through Nairobi Park and Nairobi National Park, and he has pictures of zebras and giraffes and antelopes and wildcats. And this is his drive to the airport. It's like a safari. It's amazing.
That is amazing.
And of course,
wow. Did you hear the ambiance? That was really nice too.
Yeah, it was cool. The best part of it, though, Rick, is the picture that he has. I'm sure that you're looking at it as well. He's sitting in his car, and he's holding up his phone. Looks like an iPhone, and it has the podcast. He's listening to the podcast while he's driving along, and then he sent in some audio feedback. So that's really, really cool. And in his second feedback, he said, "Sorry, the picture of the Turkish 737 didn't turn out, so he's not sending it." But anyway, always good to hear from Bhavesh in Nairobi, and look forward to hearing from you again. And by the way, that coffee still tastes wonderful, and that cup, I use it all the time. He sent me a nice coffee cup from Africa. So let's see here. Just quickly, Jack Voigt sent me an article from the NYC Aviation website, nycaviation.com, and it was published, by the way, on the 1st of April. And the title of the article, Revealed, the Dirty Truth About Chemtrails.
Oh, no.
Yes, for the past, and this is according to Captain X, for the past 27 years, I've been flying transport category aircraft. My name is Captain X, and I spray chemtrails. You may have heard about the quacks and kooks that believe that the military is spraying the skies with chemicals. What the believers don't realize is that the conspiracy runs far deeper. The military doesn't have enough aircraft to do the job, so the airlines are spraying too. Which ones? All of them. So it goes on. It's a very cute satire of chemtrails, and it shows a picture of a LAV service truck. He goes, "Hey, those aren't LAV service trucks. It's not coming out of the airplane. That's how they're pumping the chemicals into the airplane." And it's very cute, very tongue-in-cheek, And one of the pictures says, confirmed, chemtrails composed of nearly pure crystallized dihydrogen monoxide, which, of course, the formula for dihydrogen monoxide is H2O. So, anyway, thank you very much, Jack, for sending in that link to that article. Okay, so here I'm putting a pause in because it looks my iPhone is about to stop.
Really?
So,
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm going to hit the stop recording button on that recording. Not sure how long this is going to last, but at least we can go further. All right. And excellent. Say something.
1, 2, 3, testing.
Okay, let me test this.
Flight 209, you're clear for takeoff.
Okay, and let me test some audio feedback because that level sometimes is too high.
Hello, Captain Jeff. Tyler, the flight attendant. Just giving you some feedback.
Okay. I'm going to turn your volume. Yeah, you're good. You're good. Okay. Okay, so I guess we pick up with the next one, which is Scott. And you still good?
I'm good to go.
All right, good. By the way, that mic's sounding good. Okay. Scott writes, I'm a new fan of your Airline Pilot Guy podcast. I'm listening to all of them from the start. Let's see. I listen to most podcasts by iTunes, but listen sometimes on Stitcher. I notice episode number 48, part 3 on Stitcher actually plays your episode 56. In iTunes, episode 48, part 3 is correct. And that's from Scott M. Well, Scott, first of all, I'm sorry that I'm not sure exactly how to fix that because Stitcher kind of just does their own thing. They take, like when I publish the show on iTunes and they get the latest episode on the feed and they put it automatically on there. They download one copy of it and then they distribute it to people that are listening to the show via Stitcher. And by the way, I don't really like what they do with the file because the sound quality when they end up compressing it or something, and it just I hate listening to my show on Stitcher. But I know a lot of people listen to it because it's a great way to listen to the show in their car and that kind of thing. There are a lot of automobiles that kind of interface with Stitcher, so I guess I shouldn't complain about that. At least people are listening. But if you want to listen to a higher quality version, then listen to the iTunes version. But I'll see what I can find out regarding making sure that Stitcher plays the proper episode 48, part 3. So thanks for letting me know, and I'm glad to have you as a new listener. Welcome to the APG community. And moving on, Daniel Sinico sent me a link to an article about a World War II Spitfire pilot who got hit by a car, a hit-and-run incident near his Hampshire home in the UK. He was 92 years old, suffered serious head injuries on March 30th, and he just died recently. And he was a flying ace, and he was making his daily trip to the local shops when he was knocked down by a car that failed to stop. He said that, or the article goes on to say that Mr. Gregory of nearby New Road began flying during the Second World War and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross after surviving almost 70 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. He said, recalling his wartime exploits many years later, he said, I wasn't shot down, but I was shot at. Luckily, they missed most of the time. I don't know what he means by that. I guess he must have gotten hit a few times. He flew Bow fighters, BEAU fighters, and Mosquitoes before testing a wide range of aircraft, including Spitfires and Hurricanes. So anyway, sorry to hear that a great aviator passed away. So thank you for sending that, Daniel. Just a reminder, I received these reports, monthly newsletters from NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, ASRS, and the name of the newsletter is Callback, and you can subscribe yourself. It's free. It's delivered to your email inbox, and it's very convenient. And I learn a lot from each month's newsletter, and this one, the latest one, issue 423 for April, talks about auto throttle speed control issues. And it goes into what an auto throttle means, an automatic throttle, thrust control, etc., and has a couple of good write-ups from people who kind of messed up a little bit, and kind of eye-opening too, really, for me. But like, for instance, the first one entitled "A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On," a 757-200 experienced a high-altitude stall when the auto throttles failed to re-engage after being intentionally disengaged. Beginning with the captain's report, the members of the augmented flight crew present three interesting perspectives. The captain said, "We began to pick up light to moderate chop, and I selected Mach 0.78 in the auto throttle speed window. The airspeed decrease was minimal as I fought the auto throttles to retard, so I clicked them off until Mach 0.78 was achieved." Now, you probably experienced this too, Rick. I don't know, maybe the 777 does a better job, but on my airplane, if they ask us to go from like 0.77 to 75, and you just, you make the speed adjustment, the auto throttle system in its wisdom goes, "Oh, you want to slow down?" And it like goes to idle almost. It goes like pulls power way back. And you're going, no, you don't need to do that. You just crack them back a little bit, Mr. Auto Throttle System. And then you can walk them back up and you'll be right there. And so a lot of us will just turn the auto throttles off and make the adjustment ourselves and then re-engage the auto throttles.
It's interesting here because I'm reading that it says, 0.78, that's turbulence penetration speed, that's all good. And then he says that he clicked it off, and then he put 0.78 on the VNAV page of the FMC. But then, because basically on these 75767s on the top side of the what's called the EADI, the electronic adaptive direction indicator on the older 7576s, have what's called the FMA, which is your flight mode annunciations. And then, if I remember correctly, on the 767, which is basically the same as the 757, the one that deals directly with the auto throttle mode active at the time is all the way to the left. Now, if you put 0.78 on your, because there's basically two ways of selecting a speed, a Mach speed. One of them is on the mode control panel on the glare shield. You press on the speed knob and then you select 0.78. If that doesn't work, you basically go down to your FMC, your control display unit on the pedestal, and you actually go, the VNAV cruise page, you plug in 0.78 and then you execute that. And then you'll click the speed button, and then the display will go blank. So that means that the FMC is controlling the speed. But for that to work, the auto throttle mode needs to be engaged in SPD, or speed. So VNAV can be connected, but if the auto throttle is not on speed mode, if that's not on your FMA, then the FMC is commanding 0.78 Mach, but the FMC is not connected to the auto throttle servos because you don't have an active auto throttle mode. So that might be why, because I don't see that being mentioned here anywhere. It's interesting.
Well, I think the problem here is that this was happening, and then he just decided, well, I'm tired of fighting the servos, and so I'm just going to turn them off. So he turned the auto throttles off.
Right.
And then there was a distraction. He left his seat and gave it to the relief pilot. And then he walked to the aft galley to check on the flight attendants in the back and the passengers, and then moderate buffeting began. I returned to the cockpit where I observed that we were in a climb at 0.74 Mach, passing 30,500 feet. We advised ATC of the altitude loss due to turbulence and returned to flight level 350. Okay, so it was at 35, and he went all the way down. Well, I'm not sure for how far they went, but they lost it probably at least 5,000 feet. And
there it is.
Yes, what happened was he forgot to turn the auto throttles back on. Right?
That's what I was getting at. You see, so it says there the auto throttles were not engaged. When I slowed down for the turbulence just before the relief pilot was to relieve me, I clicked the auto throttles off, but did not verify they re-engaged in speed or VNAV mode. So he didn't look at his FMA. So that's what happened.
So he did re-engage them. It's just that it was in the wrong mode.
Well, basically, he did re-engage it, but he didn't actually look at his FMA, his flight mode annunciation, and look at the active mode of the auto throttle. So they're basically 0.78 was being commanded, but since there was no speed mode on the FMA, then, basically the FMC is commanding 0.78, but it can't get to the auto throttles because there's no active auto throttle mode. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, okay. The relief pilot who took the place of the captain and sat in his seat, approximately 5 minutes after I took the left seat, the first officer commented about an abnormal vibration. The vibration went from light, increasing to moderate, to the point that the autopilot disconnected. The autopilot's trying to maintain altitude, and it's going, hey, I'm sorry, I can't do anymore. I've reached the limit of my authority. You have the airplane. Hey, does this sound familiar at all? Like some other cases in the past, the autopilot system finally said, you know what? I can't do anything else to help you, so you have the airplane. The first officer assumed control of the plane. We scanned the flight instruments to ascertain the problem, but continuous buffeting made it impossible. When we realized our speed was slow, we maintained wings level, lowered the nose, made a smooth recovery. Our altitude went from flight level 350 to approximately 290, 6,000 feet. Late night flying and continuous turbulence can be very fatiguing. And so they weren't paying attention to the speed. And again, the first officer sitting in the right seat, who was there the whole time, I felt a strange vibration through the airframe, commented to the flying pilot. I initially scanned the upper and lower ICAS for possible engine malfunction. In about 10 to 15 seconds, the siren, the whaler, began. I initially believed it was an overspeed. We began descending. I took control of the airplane, maintained wings level, and closed the throttles. Ooh, that's the wrong thing to do.
No.
The vibration made it difficult to see the flight instruments. I set pitch and thrust for level flight. Finally, the right thing. Setting pitch and thrust for level flight. Upon discovery of very slow speed, I commanded climb thrust and set the nose attitude, accelerated to clean maneuver, and began to climb back to the assigned altitude. So anyway, if you want to read more about these events, which are, I'd much rather, Rick, learn from other people's mistakes than me making those mistakes myself.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. So, hey, out there, if you're flying an airplane that has a lot of automation, including auto throttle systems, got to pay attention to those things. I was in a situation where we were up at altitude, and the auto throttle servo was like adjusting the speed. The throttle was coming back, but one of the throttles, every time that the throttles were retarded, one of the throttles would come back, but it wouldn't go back up with the other one. And so every time, so it comes back, the right throttle, let's say, I don't remember which one, moves back, but then as the left throttle goes back up again, the right throttle is staying in that lower position, and then the left throttle goes back again and then pushes the right throttle back. So you have this effect of one of the throttles continuing to get lower and lower and lower, and then all of a sudden I look up and go, why is our speed dropping off? Oh, look, something is going on with our right engine. And then you look at the throttle and you go, oh, something's going on with the auto throttle system. We wrote that sucker up so that it wouldn't happen to anybody else, but you got to pay attention to those things. And it's very insidious. It sometimes happens over the course of 30 minutes or more, and you may not notice that the speed is just slowly dropping off. Oh, anyway. Al Cousins writes, unbelievable sensationalist reporting here. And he sends a link to msn.com. Okay, and I think it was basically an article, a video of some reporters from CNN, and they were kind of talking. One of them was, what's the guy's name? The Cuomo relative. Is it Andrew Cuomo? No, the guy that's one of the journalists, reporters on CNN.
I think you got me there.
Something Cuomo, but anyway, he was there, and then a couple of the other journalist ladies were reporting, and they were talking about this plane spotter video, Flug Snug, who has some fantastic high definition video, and he likes to hang out at the I think the Birmingham airport or the Manchester or some of the local UK airports. And you've probably seen their videos before, his videos before, where airplanes are coming in very extreme crosswind situations, both crosswind takeoffs and landings. And so I'm going to have a link to the flugsnug.com site and the YouTube video of what they were talking about on the CNN show. But I did take a little bit of audio of this session. So let me play this.
A frightening takeoff caught on video in the UK. You got to see this. The pilot fights fierce winds, turning sideways just feet off the tarmac before gaining control and altitude. It happened last week at Birmingham Airport as the region was being slammed by all sorts of bad weather. The pilot of that plane, not the only one facing trouble. We're told a number of incoming flights barely made it to the tarmac safely.
Barely made it.
Oh, no.
I know.
Here
I
it
don't like that
comes.
either.
Do not like that.
It wound up being
thank you.
fine.
No, it wasn't fine. You know, they should have switched airports. They should have
Or just
rerouted them
waited
somewhere else.
for the
Or waited.
weather.
It was taking off.
But they say, Michaela said a lot coming in. We're also struggling, as you can imagine, to land.
You know, there are issues when you fly.
Don't like that.
I don't like it
know,
either.
but
I'm with you.
You have to keep it in perspective. It's still a very safe mode of travel. We're having this discussion because it's very important that we all continue to stay in the air to do our jobs. I don't like this defection to the bus. You're not Hillary.
It's going to take a lot longer to get you
You're
your
not
stories.
driving to the next scene.
Everywhere I would.
So that's a little bit of a snippet of them. But, you know, he was the only one that's going, look, you know, like, well, they should have gone to a different airport. They were taking off. It's like, they couldn't have gone to another. Were they going to drive over to another airport?
Yeah.
So
Go through the toll booth.
So basically, now you have to remember when you watch these videos, you're looking at like the approach end of the runway and pointed toward the departure end of the runway. And I forgot exactly what the term is called, and I've looked it up before in the past. I can't remember what it is. But when you're using a very powerful telephoto lens, the perspective is decreased. You're looking at something, and when an airplane kind of moves sideways a little bit or whatever, it's really amplified when you see this perspective when you're looking through a really strong telephoto lens. And so, I mean, these runways are really long, but when you're looking at the video, it looks like they're like 3,000 feet long. So everything is just amplified. And yeah, there were some strong crosswinds. And so basically you see this airplane going down the runway, Rick, and it's fighting the crosswinds. You can see that. You can see the rudder moving and everything else. And of course, as soon as they lift off, what happens? Well, it weather vanes. It goes, into the wind. That's what it's supposed to do. It's like, but they're looking at this thing. Oh my gosh, they almost crashed. It's terrifying. Terrifying, I'm telling you. Although actually, looking at some of them, some of the landings, it is terrifying. Like, what are they doing? Or I've never seen crosswind landing controls or lack thereof anywhere in our country. Anyway, it's just I guess some countries teach landing in crosswinds just to not try to align the fuselage with the runway heading or whatever. How about your airline? Do you do that, Rick, or do you teach just land in a crab?
No, well, basically, it's just one of those things where it's just everybody's got their own method. I kind of do I fly in a crab, and then at about 50, 60 feet, I kick the crab and I'll put the upwind wing down first, and then kind of cross control it, and then I do the same on the takeoff. You go down the runway with your controls crossed. You go aileron down on where the wind's coming from, and opposite rudder. And then kind of rotate that way. Then the last wheel to leave the ground is going to be the upwind wheel. And then as soon as you're airborne, then the airplane's just going to weather vane. And then you just crab, just fly out the initial takeoff part in a crab. That's kind of how I do it. Now these airplanes that have these big engines, then it's suggested that you do land in a crab. And when the wind is very, very, very strong, then yeah, you do land in a crab, because you don't want to have the possibility of that engine striking the runway. But but it's no big deal. It's just basic airmanship.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think on an earlier episode of the Airline Pilot Guy show, I talked about doing a little bit of research and thinking to myself, because I've never seen anybody land like that before, except for when I see these videos in the UK and like Brazil and other places around the world. And I thought, well, there's no way that the landing gear could be possibly stressed or handle that kind of that torsion and stress and everything else. But I found a PowerPoint presentation by Boeing basically saying that all the airplanes were built to be able to handle that kind of side load and everything else up to the demonstrated crosswind that they did when they were testing the airplane, except the Long Beach products, they say. Of course, those of you who are familiar with airplane manufacturers know that when Boeing refers to the Long Beach products, they mean the McDonnell Douglas products, like the Mad Dogs that I fly, because they didn't make them really. They just inherited the airplane, so they weren't going to certify that the airplane was designed to handle those kind of stresses.
Right.
At least that
kind of washing their hands there. And it's interesting. Here's an interesting fact though, and I'm a nerd like that. And I was looking up FAR 25, and basically the certification requirements for landing gear strength. And it's interesting how FAR 25 says that an aircraft's landing gear, transport category aircraft landing gear, it needs to be able to withstand a touchdown at maximum landing weight of 800 feet a minute. So basically coming down 3-degree glide, no flare, and a touchdown at 400 feet a minute at maximum design takeoff weight. So that is very, very, very sturdy stuff down there. So
yeah, but that's not they're not talking about crosswind.
No,
they're
not talking about side load. But I mean, just think about that. Just think about what that means.
That's pretty serious. If you're just coming in on a 3-degree glide path and then you just let it just slam onto the runway, that's going to be a pretty big hit, I would say.
Yeah.
Interesting. FAR 25, huh?
FAR 25.
What do you got? You got the FARs like at your hands right now? You're like you carry them around with you or something? Wow, that's amazing.
I carry 2 carry-ons. One's with my clothes, and the other was the FARs.
Okay, I love you, Rick. All right, Larry in Tulsa. Some more feedback on window shades.
Hello, Captain Jeff. This is Larry in Tulsa. Just listening to APG 162 and the discussion about the window shades up or down. You mentioned other countries. I've flown in some of those other countries, and I remember several in which case the requirement there was at least at nighttime flying, that the window shades be closed and the lights turned off. The explanation given to me for that was it makes it harder to shoot at the airplane when it's on final or when it's taking off. So that's just a small amount of feedback I thought I'd share with you. Good day.
Okay, now I played a rim shot because I'm thinking, is he joking?
I was going to say something here, but he sounded pretty serious.
Well, Larry, where are you flying, man? I'm not really sure if he was being serious or not there. So, well, thank you, Larry. And again, not sure what countries you're flying in, but apparently they're not the safest in the world if people are shooting at the airplanes.
Yeah, maybe that airline didn't have a very good, frequent flyer program.
I guess not. Thanks, Larry. I always appreciate your feedback. Alex sent in this link. He said, I thought this was an interesting article, and it's regarding the tragedy of the Malaysia Flight 17, the one that was shot down over the eastern portion of Ukraine. And it says that the victim's passport still at crash site alongside other passengers' possessions. And basically it's showing some of the remains of passenger items from the victims of that tragedy, of that Boeing 777 that was shot down, and they're still there, which is amazing to me. I mean, that site is still not secured, and they still haven't gathered up all the evidence and belongings of the passengers there. And there are several pictures of sunglasses and cell phones and parts of clothing charred. It's just heartbreaking to see this, and the fact that when was that? Was that
this was June of last year, I believe, June or July last year.
Wow, that's just
July 17th last year.
Yeah, so not quite a year, but still, come on.
This is unheard of. I mean, how do you not? What you have to secure the crash site first thing first. I mean, it's just amazing how it's almost been a year. Well, not almost, but it's coming up on a year, and there's still stuff laying around like this. It's just wow.
Well, I hope these countries, get their act together. And I know they're kind of in a, I don't know if you call it a war, but they're fighting each other over there, and it's kind of a war zone. And I guess that's the reason why this is happening over there. It's just it's sad. It's heartbreaking. Before I read this one, I think, speaking of heartbreaking, how about heartwarming. Let's move from sad to happy. This was sent to me by Biz Traveler Paul, and he said, I thought you might like to see a good airline news story for a change. And then he has a link to a sky.com article about 2 Air Malta staff got married at an airport in Malta before taking an unusual flight path with wedding guests over the Mediterranean. And I guess they were in an Air Malta jet as they did this. And so, you've seen those sites, Flight Radar 24, Flight Aware, etc., where it kind of tracks the path of the flight. And I've seen some really creative tracks left by Boeing, when they're out there testing the 747-8 and some other airplanes, and they kind of plan their flight path so that it leaves a distinctive track on these tracking sites. And there is a picture here, which we'll include in the show notes, of a large heart-shaped flight track and then a smaller heart-shaped flight track, kind of almost superimposed on each other. And so obviously they did that on purpose, took off from Malta and did that sky riding, I guess. Or it's not really sky riding, though, is it? Track riding.
That's really nice. That's really cool. I've never seen stuff. I mean, like 2 hearts. That's cute.
So that was kind of interesting. Again, the link to that will be in the show notes. So thank you, Paul, for sending that in. And Armando sent me some audio feedback. He's down in El Paso, I think. Yeah.
Hey, Captain Jeff. It's your friend Armando from El Paso, Texas. Just wanted to send you 3 pieces of quick feedback. For first one, APG 161. What you guys were discussing about when passengers have concerns and the captain or the first officer walks out to check it out. I remember when I was a kid, I was flying on Pan Am from JFK to Madrid, and I started flipping out because I started seeing a lot of liquid coming out of the wing, and I pressed the flight attendant button. So the flight attendant came over, I told her, she called, and the captain personally came down and explained to me that it was condensation due to the weather, the humidity. He pretty much sat there for a good 2 to 3 minutes, putting me at rest and people around me because I was pretty flipped out. So, I'm glad that's still done by you and your peers. I haven't seen it done again since, probably that time. But
oops, shoot.
What happened?
I accidentally hit the trackpad, and it went to a different note. And when you do that, it ends up stopping the playback. So let's see. Let me hit this again.
Hey, Captain Jeff. He pretty much sat there for a good 2. That's still done by you and your peers. I haven't seen it done again since, probably that time. But anyway, and the second piece of feedback, this is for APG 162, talking about flight songs or aviation songs. I don't know if you recall, since you live in the East Coast in Georgia, down in Disney World, there used to be an attraction sponsored by Delta Airline. No, I'm sorry, originally by Eastern Airlines, called If You Had Wings, and it had a real catchy song called If You Had Wings, If You Had Wings. And then the attraction, after Eastern went bankrupt, was sponsored by Delta for a couple of years, and they had their own catchy song. The attraction was called Dream Flight.
Oh, I thought it was It's a Small World. It's a small no.
So that's it related to the song. And then the last piece of feedback, for me, the ultimate aviation song has to be Countdown by the Canadian rock band Rush. They wrote it to honor Space Shuttle Columbia's first flight back in '81, and it's just an incredible song in my opinion. Hard rock, and close to the end you can hear the audio from the original the original flight when the space shuttle was ascending. And the reason I consider it an aviation song is because, as we all know, the space shuttle, when it was in service to return back to Earth, it functioned more as a glider / aircraft than a rocket. So there you go. Three quick pieces of feedback, and just my 2 cents. Thanks a lot, and talk to you later. Bye.
It's your 3 cents, not 2 cents. Thank you, Armando, for that. And I played that song to which he was referring, Countdown, on the last episode when we were playing a bunch of songs. So thanks again, Armando, for all of that feedback. And yeah, we can never discount any concerns that passengers may have, and I've talked about it many times on the show when it's easy to just blow off a passenger thinking they don't know what they're talking about, and then it actually is something that you should be concerned about. So
absolutely,
always,
they may just be right.
That's right. You never know, and it goes a long way. Even if you suspect that they're they have no idea what they're talking about, it's still a good way. It's good PR for the airline to go back and express concern. So let's continue with this. All right, Tim Van Ram sent in a link to an article, the first super carrier, the USS Ranger, that was used in the movie Top Gun, seen here in a drone video on its way to Texas to be broken up. There was a group in the Pacific Northwest trying to save her as a museum ship, but lacked the necessary funds to do it. So if you're interested in seeing this drone video of this beautiful super carrier USS Ranger being towed to her demise, then look at the article in the show notes. And it was interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that or not, Rick.
Yeah, I did. It's a beautiful ship. And you know what I just found out recently? It's that, because this carrier is CV-61, and if it's a nuclear carrier, it's CVN. So this was not a nuclear carrier.
Oh. I think this series, I guess the Forrestal series, maybe, I don't know, I'm not from the Navy and I don't know that much about ships, but I wonder if that was the last series of super carriers that were not nuclear. I don't
Interesting.
know. So anyway, great film. By the way, Top Gun, do you remember when they released that film?
Oh, I remember. That was May of '86. I was 5 years old.
Wow. So you were alive then.
I was, I was alive then.
Yeah, I was in the Air Force at the time, and I was a pilot training instructor. And in fact, I remember going, it was a double date, my wife and I and my flight commander and his wife went to the movies in Columbus, Mississippi, because we were at Columbus Air Force Base, and he flew F-4s in the Air Force before he came to Air Training Command. And I think that, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I think, I've flown with a lot of different people in my life, and I'd say that he was one of the best pilots I'd ever flown with. I mean, as far as being very aggressive, but very smooth. And he was, to me, the epitome of a great fighter pilot. And so we watched the movie together, and he said, there were some inaccuracies and errors, but it was still an enjoyable film. And we'd never seen anything like that, back in 1986. That was the first time you'd see awesome footage like that in a major motion picture. So, wow. And speaking of Top Gun, I guess they're still trying to get the funding or get the studio to agree to produce Top Gun 2. Several people involved in the original Top Gun are still fighting to is it Paramount, or I'm not sure what company?
It was Paramount. That the original was Paramount.
Okay, so there's hope that maybe sometime in the future we'll watch Top Gun 2, and I think it's going to have to do or something to do with drones. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not making that up.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not. Okay, Ken Kranz, he sends me a lot of feedback, and this is one of them. He sent me a link to this, and he said, well, he didn't really say a lot. He just said, listen to this. It's regarding a United plane and a little boo-boo.
It's 1545, turn right November Alpha, November Kilo, November Bravo, and then contact the ramp.
Hello, to the ramp, United 1145. 1545, we're off the ramp here.
United 1545, Sagan, you're off to the side of the taxiway there?
That's affirmative, United 1545.
Roger that. Are you clear? Looks like you're clear of the whole short lines there for United 1545. We'll get a slug out for you.
United 1545, thank you.
And it goes on.
Is there any tugs on frequency?
It's interesting to listen to how, Tower's coordinating with some other, ops vehicles and then asking further in this feedback about, are all the passengers okay? And I guess they coordinated for some air stairs to come up to the airplane and offload the passengers and get them in buses and bring them into the terminal. Not exactly the way you'd want to end your trip.
Yeah.
But it was night, and they I guess the captain steering the airplane kind of cut the corner or something, and the airplane actually left the prepared surface. And as we know, this does happen quite often. So you got to be careful out there when you're steering your airplane.
Just follow the yellow line.
And sometimes you can't even strictly follow that. I mean, as I mentioned in previous shows, if your airplane has a long wheelbase, you have to kind of do a lot of oversteering, especially on very, very sharp or tight turns, to make sure that your main gear is actually staying on the taxiway.
Right.
Because
the wheel that steers is way behind you. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true, especially in a big old airplane like the 777, I would imagine.
Yep, you oversteer quite a bit.
Yeah. And I do too on the airplane that I fly, believe it or not. It's not a jumbo jet, but it has a very long wheelbase. I've talked about that before, where I have to almost pretend like I'm in a 747 or whatever when I'm making tight turns, because I don't want to drag my main gear into a taxi light or off the runway. Abner in Boston sent me some audio feedback.
Hello, Captain Jeff. It's your favorite mailman from Boston, Abner. Just calling to say that I know as a few hours ago, someone just landed a gyrocopter in Washington, D.C. Well, I just want to say it was a mailman, and it wasn't me.
Uh-huh. A likely story. Have we heard from Abner since this incident? No, I haven't. Have you?
No, and this is his alibi, I believe.
Yeah, well, let's go see what else he has to say.
I was busy working, so I didn't have time to do any of that craziness. And second, over clam chowder we had here one time when I met you here in Boston, we had discussed one of the longest flights ever. I think you mentioned the Voyager program, and I had mentioned something about a Cessna that flew around in the 50s for quite a few days. Well, that plane was a 172 Cessna, and the flight took place in 1958. They were in the air for 64 days and 22 hours without landing. And they refueled the plane. They put a winch on the plane, brought the fuel up through hoses, brought food up through hoses, water. They were able to bathe. They were able to shave. They were slept. Two guys, one was a mechanic. They were able to change the oil filter and all that good stuff on the plane. And they put bigger tanks of fuel so they could stay aloft a lot longer. It was a publicity stunt for a hotel in Las Vegas, but they said it was for cancer research because back then Vegas was pretty, shady place. Not compared to what it is now. So it's an interesting story. I'll put a link or a post in the email so you can see it. And then I'd also like to say I do love the shows with Miami Rick. I hope one day he comes to Boston too. I'm going to invite him over for a lobster roll, as we say up here. But safe flying. Enjoy the show as always, and take care. Wishing you the best.
Well, thank you, Abner, and those nice, kind words about Miami Rick. Are you blushing?
That was great. I'd love to have a lobster roll. Is that how you say it?
I think you need to practice that.
I can't do my Boston accent.
Okay. Well, so, that first thing he was talking about, the endurance flight, isn't that amazing? It was a Cessna 172, and they started in December of 1958. Let's see, what else was really, really monumental about December of 1958? A very famous person was born. That was me. Yep, believe it or not, December 26th, 1958 was when I was born. And then all through January and then part of February, 64 days, 22 hours, 19 minutes, the world endurance record in a propeller-driven airplane was set. I bet that still stands. What do you bet? And wow. Anyway, so I just excerpted just a little bit of the article in his diary. John Cook, the pilot, wrote, "We got a quart of bath water, a large towel, and a soap every other day. On January 12th, 1959, after refueling chores, Tim removed his clothes and stepped out onto the platform for a refreshing sponge bath. He started by brushing his teeth. Just then, Cook realized that the airplane wasn't going to clear an upcoming ridge if that platform wasn't pulled in. Cook yelled at Tim to pull in the platform and later told of seeing his partner struggling to complete the task, buck naked and weighing 240 pounds, with a toothbrush sticking out of one side of his mouth and toothpaste streaming out of the other. They cleared the ridge but learned to delay hygienic activities until they were over flatter terrain." So it was interesting that they flew most of the hours over southwestern deserts in the Blythe, California, and Yuma, Arizona areas, but would occasionally fly as far west as Van Nuys and Los Angeles to garner radio and TV publicity. The entries in Cook's journal begin to reflect the effects that loss of sleep, lack of physical activity, the constant engine noise, and daily chores were having on both crew. Quote, "Stalled out, overloaded, across the side of an uphill slope trying to get around with a full load in belly tank, and that made us realize what our chances would be at night, very slim, so we stick around airport at night for that beautiful smooth runway," he wrote. And they rotated flying duties every 4 hours, but it was difficult to get enough sleep during the daylight hours. According to a journal entry on January 9th, the 36th day aloft, the airplane flew itself for more than an hour. Tim had dozed off over the Blythe Airport at 2:55 in the morning, just minutes before he was to awaken Cook, and then he woke up at 4 a.m. halfway to Yuma. The Mitchell wing leveler type autopilot was still working that night, and it undoubtedly saved their lives. I awoke and was flying in a canyon heading due south. I flew for 2 hours before I recognized any lights or the cities. I made a vow to myself that I would never tell John what had happened, he later told a reporter. I guess he finally found out.
Yeah,
anyway,
I think he found out.
So if you want to learn, read more about this very interesting long endurance flight, I'll have the link to it in the show notes. And continuing on, let's see. Sport pilot David said he just discovered a new app called Share Aviation. Share, S-H-A-R-E, Aviation. It's a community exclusively for folks who dig aviation. He says, I'm guessing that many APG listeners might like it. And he linked a bunch of his GoPro videos on it and have enjoyed looking at others' videos. It's kind of like Facebook for pilots. Check it out. And I think it was created by the Airplane Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA. So check it out. A link in the show notes. Javon writes, I wanted to ask about something I've had a hard time locating information about concerning your Mad Dog. In another feedback I sent you, I explained that I was a 14-year Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force as an airborne radar surveillance technician for the E-3 Sentry, a.k.a. AWACS. One of the cool jobs I got to help the crew chiefs do while on deployment was to help jumpstart one of the AWACS 4 TF-33 engines during a launch. For those who don't know what I mean, this is usually an operation used to manually open the starter bleed valve on the engine. This valve allows compressed air from the APU to manually motor or spin the engine during startup until the necessary N1 and N2 value is reached for the engine to be self-operating, in other words, idle thrust. Well, these valves notoriously like to stick, especially on these old Boeing 707s. Luckily, the engineers designed a little lever which discreetly sticks out the side of the engine pylon. This can be pulled using a special tool that will manually open the valve from the outside. Thus, no mission scrub due to not being able to start an engine. Well, I got to hold the ladder during this process, and I got to tell you, Jeff, I had no clue what I was getting into or why the guys kept telling me to make sure that I hold my breath when combustion starts. The air from the main fan literally knocks the wind out of you. And more than anything else, don't let that ladder and its occupant get blown away. Captain Jeff, seriously, even for a low bypass ratio fan, when that fuel is first introduced, let's just say I would gladly invite the loonies at Mahu Beach to help perform this procedure to compare which gives you the truer effect of jet blast. I guarantee all would agree standing 3 to 4 feet behind the main fan bypass of a tiny JT3D, which only makes like 17,000 pounds of thrust at takeoff power, spooling up to idle trumps holding a fence 400 or 500 feet away from multiple engines at takeoff thrust. Of course, he's talking about, what is that, the beach?
That's in St. Martin, Maho Beach.
Yeah. Not to mention, we can't run away into the bay when the thrust becomes too much because you're holding the ladder for the guy operating the valve.
Wow.
But I digress. Sounds like a fun time, doesn't it?
That sounds like a great time.
Anyways, on an American Mad Dog leaving Oklahoma City last winter, the pilot came on the PA and said that due to an inoperative APU, we would have to start our engines at the gate. Let's see. This was because it would require the ground guys to help start it. As I always sit back at the window seat right in front of the engines whenever I fly a Mad Dog, I got to watch the whole process take place. First, they brought the start cart to the back of the jet, hooked up the bleed hose somewhere beneath us. Yeah, he wouldn't be able to see that. Started up the diesel, brought it to full power. I even saw the hose inflate. And then, nothing. They just stood there looking stumped. A few minutes later, the pilot came back on the PA and said that one of the engines wouldn't start from the cockpit due to the same situation I explained above, I assumed, and would need to be started from the ground, except the guys on the ground didn't know how to do it. This meant the first officer, a female, had to go out and show all the tough guys how to start this cold Mad Dog. A few minutes later, I see her with ear protection walk past behind the engine somewhere. A few minutes later, the engine starts right up. She strolls back past the window, looking too cool, might I add. And all I can think is, yeah, her uniform and hair is way too nice to be the one who held the ladder. So here is my question, or here are my questions. First off, is it correct for me to assume that she showed them how to open the manual blank hold on for dear life valve? If so, with your engines being a lot higher than the ones on our birds, where in the world are these valves located on the Mad Dog? I've looked everywhere and I can't find any information about this. He says, well, sorry for such a long-winded email. Keep up the good work, and thank you so much for a great community you've created here. Best wishes, and beware Miami Rick's heavy wake on departure. I think he's talking about the airplane. Maybe he's talking about you. I don't know.
I don't know, maybe both.
Have you?
Yeah.
You got to watch out for Miami Rick's heavy wake. Just kidding. He's not a heavy guy. I mean, he's a heavy driver, but not a heavy guy. So back to your question. What I think happened, of course, I wasn't there. I think that she didn't actually access the manual start valve. I think she probably went out there and told the people with the start cart how to operate the proper switches to make sure that, because the start cart has a low pressure mode and a high pressure mode, and I think that maybe they just weren't engaging the proper mode for the high pressure air to flow through the hose and help start the engine. That's what I'm guessing. We do have manual start valves. I think every airplane has an access panel that you can open up and get the wrench on it or whatever. It depends on the engine, I guess. And actually activate the valve manually and then close it once the start cycle is complete, as you or the guy that you were holding the ladder for did, Javon. So I don't really think that she would have done that. If somebody asked me to go out there, I think we can do that. I think we're allowed to do that, but I would probably insist that a mechanic do that. I've had that situation in out bases where we didn't have Acme maintenance. We had contract maintenance out there, and they were the ones that were right up against the engine when the thing was starting. So just based on your information and the fact that her hair wasn't all messed up and everything, I have a feeling that she didn't actually activate the manual start valve. And if you were walking up close to the JT90 Pratt & Whitneys that we have on the Mad Dogs.
Like the JT8s?
I'm sorry, JT8s. There's a panel on the underside, kind of on the side, but not, the side and underside, where, it's clearly marked on the door that that's the access panel for, going in there and activating the valve. So we do have them. I'm sure that the 777's got the Rolls Royces on it.
Ours have the freighters have GE90s.
GE90s, that's a big
G9-110. So, and just like I said, it's there's always a panel where you go up there and you manually open this start valve that sometimes sticks. And the interesting thing here is that the tool to actually do this with, it actually stays with the airplane. It's part of what's called a flight kit.
Oh.
So that if this happens, anywhere, the tool is there. And this flight kit has a bunch of other stuff like the tools that you need. Yeah, the tool that you need to take for example, do a wheel change. You have certain things that are required for for basic aircraft maintenance when you're away from let's say a base. So so this tool is part of the flight kit. So every airplane has that.
Oh, neat. Mm. I'm not sure we have that. I know we have a kit up front that has gear pins and some stuff like that, but I'm not sure we have the actual tool to start the manual start. I could be wrong, but it's not something that they teach us. They just said make sure that the gear pins are there. So, all right. So again, that would be my guess. What would your guess be, Rick? Do you think she actually activated the valve, or?
I don't know. I mean, no, maybe? I don't think she did either. But yeah, I'm with you on this one. I'm pretty sure that all she did was tell these guys how to engage the correct mode on that start cart, basically. Because like you said, and it's actually, it's actually written on the manual for us, our operations manual. We can't actually intervene or do anything maintenance related because that's what maintenance is there for.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, excellent. Let's keep on moving. I want to get as many of these knocked out as I can. Again, it's going to be another long show. Stuart had a question about the autopilot. From what I've learned so far about the autopilot, it's switched on in the takeoff climb anywhere from 500 to 1,000 feet. This seems to differ depending on the airline. Okay. Yeah, well, I guess it depends on the airplane too. I think in the Airbus fleet, that's pretty true. Pretty low to the ground. They ended up switching on the auto flight system. On the airplane that I fly, it's very rare that I see anybody turn on the autopilot that low to the ground. It's usually several thousand feet at least, and then if it's me, then it's like maybe in the upper teens and 20s before I turn on the autopilot. Because nice. I like flying the airplane,
That's why we're pilots.
Yeah. So on approach, he says, when the autopilot is disengaged, there's always a very clear and concise closed-loop communication between the pilot flying and the pilot monitoring regarding the fact that the autopilot is about to be disengaged manually. Prior to pulling out of autopilot, both pilots confirm and clarify that they are both happy to proceed with disengaging the autopilot. Once the disengaged alarms have silenced, the pilot monitoring states to the pilot flying, "You have control," and the pilot flying confirms, "I have control." I base these observations, casting my mind back to when I was a cabin crew on the Boeing 767, and one of the cabin crew positions for takeoff and landing saw me lucky enough to require the jump seat on the flight deck. I've also studied numerous cockpit approach videos on YouTube, all of which seem to clarify what I'm saying. However, on departure and as the aircraft is climbing and the autopilot engages, there is no verbal communication between either pilot, which would seem to confirm that the autopilot has successfully engaged and is now in control. I find this puzzling. There must be a reason for this, but I can't think what the answer would be. It's important to be critically aware of what is going on in the cockpit between both pilots and the settings of the flight director regards to pulling out of autopilot. I can't understand why the same critical closed-loop communication between both pilots would not also apply to the fact that the autopilot now has control of the aircraft on departure. Gear up is always requested verbally, as are the calls to retract the flaps at various speeds, but never any mention of the fact that the autopilot is now in command of the aircraft. It would seem to me to be a critical key point in that phase of flight, that both pilots are on the same wavelength and are aware that the flight director is now in command. I would just be interested to hear what you have to say on this. And then he writes another question. I'll go ahead and read the question, then we'll answer both. Also, could you also please just quickly explain what the term minimums means with regard to the landing phase? Let's see. Just wanted to point out that whilst I'm writing this, I'm currently watching yourself and Miami Rick record episode 161 via YouTube. Looks like you're having fun sampling your alcoholic beverages prior to pressing record. Many thanks, Captain Jeff, and I'll be sending you some more coffee. Thank you, Stuart. So, getting back to the autopilot, I think that might be, it's not a regulation per se, but I think that it is an operating procedure at a lot of airlines, and at mine, and maybe this is just something in recent years, but we've been very insistent upon good communication about what is happening, what modes the autopilot's in, what altitude is set in the altitude select window, and at Acme we do verbally communicate when the autopilot is on. So when I'm flying the airplane and finally around, the transition altitude at 18,000 feet or whatever, I decide it's time for me to turn the autopilot on. When I turn the autopilot on, I say autopilot is on, or usually I'll say George has it. That's kind of a nickname that a lot of us use for the autopilot. And I'll even take the added step a lot of times of, pointing to the light that says the autopilot 1 is on or autopilot 2 is on. And you're right, Stuart, it is very important that we verbalize and communicate with our crew member/crew members what we are doing, what we're thinking, what our intentions are, and just in case something's missed. Wouldn't you agree, Rick?
Absolutely, and just as you point out, Captain Jeff, all these things are very clearly written in a document called the Standard Operating Procedures. And these are procedures that are set by the airline based on the manufacturer's recommendations of the operation of the different systems. Now, something as critical as autopilot operation, it needs to be confirmed not only by the pilot flying, but also by the pilot monitoring, by looking at what we talked about. There's a couple of feedbacks ago, the FMA, the flat mode initiations. When the autopilot goes on, then the one that's actually flying the aircraft will press the autopilot button and say autopilot engaged, and then the pilot monitoring will actually confirm the autopilot engagement on both the button lighting up on the 76 and 777 type aircraft, and the FMA actually showing autopilot on the screen there. Now, as far as engaging autopilot at different altitudes, I do the same as you, Captain Jeff. I like to hand fly, the mid-teens, lower 20s, and then on the way down, usually disconnected about, weather permitting, at about 10 to 15,000 feet and hand fly the whole thing in. But the autopilot can actually be engaged as low as 200 feet AGL. So as soon as you take off, as soon as you hit 200 feet above ground level, you can click the autopilot on, and you can have the autopilot on all the way down to an automatic landing if the runway allows it, because to do an auto land, you don't only have to have the equipment necessary on the aircraft, but the runway has to be a Category 2 or Category 3 equipped runway, which basically allows you to do an auto land. Now, if you're not going to do an auto land, then you need to disconnect it before you hit 50 feet radio altitude, because at 50 feet is when the aircraft will start doing the flare maneuver, and you don't want to disconnect the autopilot in the middle of doing that. So above 200 feet engage, and above 50 feet disengage. That's what I have on that. So it's standard operating procedures. It's pretty set in stone there. Who says what at what time at what point, and that way everybody's on the same page. Because you have to remember that airlines have hundreds and even thousands of pilots, and it'd be a mess if everybody just flew how they want it. So that's why these airlines have these procedures set forth, so that no matter who's flying with who, everybody's on the same page.
Right. We have a little bit different setup. Ours are not called standard operating procedures, but we have standard operating procedures embedded in our operations manual, flight operations manual, and our actual individual airplane operation manual. And the altitudes vary a little bit at least the airplane that I fly. The minimum altitude for engagement is for the VNAV system to be engaged is a minimum of 400 feet. And I'm sorry, the LNAV portion of the thing. And I believe we got to be 500 feet for autopilot engagement on my airplane is the minimum when we're taking off. So yours is a lot lower than ours. And coming in, if we're flying a Category 1 approach, we have to have the autopilot disconnected, by minimums, and hand fly beyond that. We can keep the auto throttles on, but they have to be knocked off before 50 feet because then it's going into its flare and retard mode. And if you're hand flying, you don't want to do that. It's only when you have an auto land briefed and everything is hooked up, coupled approach. But so there are a little bit of there's some differences there. But the same idea, there are procedures that are written that we're all expected to follow, and then we have techniques that are taught, and a technique is not a procedure, so you can use it if you want or not use it. And then we also have things like preferred techniques, or what do they call it? Something about practices like. Now I can't remember the term, but anyway, there's a lot of standardization is very important. As Rick just said, there at Acme Airlines we have more than 12,000 pilots, and on each airplane, thousands of pilots, and we all want to be standardized as much as possible. So that contributes to safety. Verbalize, as if you listen to my show at all, I'm a big proponent of communication. And so, communication is letting the person that you're with up there know what you're doing and what you're thinking about doing, so that there's no question that, he didn't say that he was going to do that, but the airplane's doing that. I wonder if he knows that the airplane's doing that. And he goes, "Hey, Captain Jeff, did you mean to do that?" No.
Right.
Thank you for noticing and telling me, so we don't do something wrong. Let's see. Minimums is... regarding the landing phase it depends on the type of approach, but in general it's the lowest you are going to go and either continue descending toward the runway for landing, or at the point at which you make that's the point where you if you're not going to land, then you start initiating a missed approach or a go around. So that's a critical point in time, space that we use to basically make our decision whether we're going to continue for safe landing or not. And so it depends on the approach. A Category 1 approach, typically the minimum or the decision altitude is 200 feet above the touchdown. When you go to a Category 1, sometimes it's as low as about 100 feet above the ground. And then if it's a Category 3, it could be 50 feet, as in my airplane, or it could be, there may not even be a minimum for a Category what? Category 2? I mean, a Category 3.
Category 3 can be 0-0. No minimums, no visibility
depending
required.
On the airplane.
All the way down.
Yeah, so the airplane that I fly, Category 3, we do fly the Category 3 coupled landing, except that we must see something at 50. If we don't, then we initiate a miss go around thing.
And the interesting thing about that is that just think of that. If you're coming down in a Category 3 approach and you don't see anything at 50 and you begin to go around at 50 feet, you might actually touch the runway before you get airborne again.
Yep. Our book tells us that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Interesting is a one word. Okay, so thank you, Stuart, for your feedback and questions. Hopefully I think we did a pretty good job of answering those, don't you think?
I think so.
Speaking of alcoholic beverages, I'm getting thirsty. So, are you doing okay, Rick?
You know what? I think it's time to rate the minibar here.
Oh boy! See, he's got a minibar at his disposal, right below his desk or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Okay, go ahead and open it.
There we go.
Ah, nice. I'm going to have to wait because I'm going to keep on going here because, let's see, I'm trying to do some math here. I think we've been going, what, a couple hours?
Well, we've been on Skype now for an hour and 35 minutes, and then, we did, 20 minutes, a half hour before that?
Yeah, we've been going for some time, but we're going to keep going.
Let's do it.
You're up for it?
Absolutely. Let's do
Okay.
it.
I still have battery remaining on my second iPhone, so I'm going to keep on going. Let's see. And by the way, the iPhone is actually providing the internet. It's doing double duty, not only video, but it's also providing our internet connection here. It turns out that my bandwidth here in my hotel in Tampa was the one that was the culprit for the bad signal, so finally got this worked out. Let's see, Freight Dog Matt sent in some audio feedback.
Hey, Captain Jeff, it's Freight Dog Matt again. I just had a quick question for Miami Rick. I just listened to...
Okay, that's for you. So I'm going to move on to something else. No,
through 163, and he was talking about the aircraft monitoring system on the 777 and the 76 that will report to maintenance. I was just curious, how deep does that reporting system go? Are you guys still, filling out squawk forms that you're turning into MX at the end of a flight, or sending out emails to, your maintenance department, or does that system pretty much monitor everything all the way down to light bulbs? Anyways, that's my question. And Captain Jeff, just wanted to let you know we're all counting on you. We'll see ya.
Well, thank you. Is that a reference to Airplane and Leslie Nielsen or something?
I think so, but don't call me Shirley.
All right, so he was addressing that to you, Miami Rick, so it's now your turn. You're going to have to take that beer out of your mouth and answer this question.
Well, let me take the beer out of my mouth first. There we go. Aircraft monitoring system on the 777. It actually every system is monitored by the system here, and it's quite interesting because maintenance, what they do is they set certain parameters on every system on board. Propulsion, air conditioning, hydraulics, electrics, all sorts of stuff. And then once a parameter is once a figure passes, the preset parameter, then an automatic maintenance report is sent out to maintenance. Now, the thing here is, along with a certain failure or something going wrong with the system, you'll get the associated ICAS message or status message. And then what you do there is you will copy down the name of the malfunction or the status message or whatever might be going on with the airplane. And then you'll actually send an ACARS message down to the maintenance personnel at the station where you happen to be landing next, so that they know what's going on with the airplane. And then when you check in with operations, you let them know whether the aircraft is condition 1, which means that no maintenance action is required before the aircraft is dispatched again. Condition 2, if there's something wrong with the airplane that maintenance needs to take a look at, but the airplane is dispatchable. Or condition 3, which means that basically the airplane can't leave because something major is wrong with the airplane. So, all these reports are automatic. As I said, preset parameters on certain systems, on all systems really. And then once, like we spoke, like we talked about last episode, for example, the vibration monitoring system. Once you get past a certain value, then that automatically sends out a message letting maintenance know that there is a problem or there might be a problem with this or that, and then they know what to do so that they have a better idea of what's going on with the airplane. And it's basically just dispatch reliability stuff, just to get the airplane back in the air as quick as possible. Making it make money the way it's supposed to be making money. So It's amazing. Now on the 767, it wasn't as automated. Keep in mind the 767 is an older type airplane. Now on the ones that I flew before I flew the 777, they used to have what's called bites, BITEs, which is built-in test equipment, which is what the maintenance guys would go. They'd go down to the E&E, and then they'd go into this into the bite cabinet, and I'm sure there's got to be some 7576 mechanics out there that could probably correct me, and they'd go into the system, and then the system would spit out a certain number or code, and then they would cross-reference that to a manual, and that would let them know exactly what was going on with the airplane. And I don't believe that was sent out via ACARS to maintenance. I don't think that was the case, at least in the airplanes that I flew. But on the 777, as I said, every system is monitored, and everything that goes past a certain parameter is sent out to maintenance so that they know what to do.
On the airplane I fly, we have automatic engine reporting that goes on with it. It's kind of like, going on at certain intervals, and we don't even know it's going on, and we don't know what the result of the report is or anything. It's just automatically sent to maintenance control, and we're oblivious of it. I would imagine that. Is it the same kind of thing that goes on with the system on your 777, or
yep.
do you, because so he was basically saying, so if there's something that you're aware of, then of course you still need to do a write-up and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't take away the responsibility for doing a maintenance write-up, right?
Oh no, for us, I mean, the system is completely autonomous. If it senses that a parameter has been surpassed, or we've gone over a parameter, or the system went over a parameter, then a message is automatically generated, and we don't know about it.
Okay. So if something is going on in the airplane, and like it's like a flight instrument flag or something like that, then that's not something that's necessarily autonomously reported. You kind of report it by writing up a certain thing, right?
Right, but
you
let's
have
say, for
logbooks
example,
still.
let's say, for example, the I don't know, you have duct pressure or duct over temp, that kind of stuff. So that would be something that gets sent out as an ACARS maintenance report automatically, or like we said, engine vibration, or stuff like that. But if it's something that like you mentioned, a light bulb, obviously not, or if it's something that we observe, then we write it up.
Okay.
But,
yeah, so you still have a maintenance logbook, and you still, write up things by hand, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a combination of both those things.
Yes, sir. All
righty. Thank you very much for answering that for us. Miami Rick, freight dog to freight dog there, right? Let's see. Swedish Andreas sent some audio feedback.
Hi there, Captain Jeff. This is Swedish Andreas, and I have a question regarding the Southwest Flight 345 crash in 2013. So I found this footage from inside the plane when it skids off the runway, and after the airplane has stopped, you can hear the flight attendants urging the passengers to sit down in their seat and wait until they reach the gate to keep their belts on. And the airplane has obviously skidded off the ground. You can see sparks in the reflection from on the engine cowl. And there's general ruckus and so on. And still, a couple of minutes in, they still urge the passengers to sit down with the belts on. And I just was thinking, well, if I've been on board that airplane and I've been sitting by the emergency exit, I would have been out of there, like the second it stopped. And so I just wonder what your take. You can watch the video. I will send you the link and see what you think about that. Bye.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I forgot. Happy tailwinds and all that. I love the podcast.
Thank you. You don't have to add that at the end, but I appreciate it, Andreas. This is the video that he was talking about. Somebody was taking some probably cell phone video from sitting near their window seat. They're about to touch down, runway 4, LaGuardia. There's my layover hotel. Okay, well, it goes on. If you want to watch the full video, we'll have a link to that in the show notes. But at one point, you do hear the flight attendants say, to everybody to remain in their seats. Although it doesn't sound like they were using the public address system. Perhaps when it hit, this is the airplane, by the way, Southwest, that hit nose wheel first on runway 4, and turns out in the investigation they found that the captain took control from the first officer at 400 feet above the ground, and I guess she wasn't comfortable with the way he was coming in for the approach and ended up pushing the nose forward, and the nose wheel struck the runway first and collapsed, and perhaps during the damage that was caused by that, and that's usually where our electronics equipment is situated on the airplane. Perhaps maybe it knocked out the electricity to the PA system. I don't know why they weren't using the PA system, because I didn't hear anything from the cockpit, the pilots either, as far as a public address to tell the people to stay seated and blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the first things you want to do is, control, the situation in the cabin as much as you can and reassure people that everything is okay. So again, I wasn't there, so I'm not sure exactly whether or not they actually got on the PA system or communicated in some way with the passengers. But as far as you, Andreas, sitting near the exit and just initiating your own evacuation, that's not always a very good idea. In fact, it's usually never a good idea to initiate your own evacuation, because a lot of times the evacuation is the thing that causes the most injuries in these kind of incidents. And you have to rely upon the trained crew members to know when it's time to get out and when it's not time to get out. I don't. What's your take on that, Rick?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and it's very interesting what you say, because 8 times out of 10, the after a landing like this one, for example, where nobody was hurt during the landing itself, what will actually hurt you is the evacuation. So you never want to start an evacuation on your own. Absolutely not. Just listen to your cabin crew. Just basically follow their instructions, because they know what they're doing, because that's what they're trained for. They're not just there to look pretty and hand out drinks and peanuts. They're there for your safety. So listen to them, pay attention to them, and just basically do what they tell you, because they're there for you, for your safety.
And obviously, by not initiating the evacuation right away, that was a good thing. I don't think anybody really ended up getting hurt in this situation. I think maybe they finally did command an evacuation, but I think it was very calm and orderly, and I don't think there was any major injury involved in this.
Except for some egos, perhaps.
Yeah, and turns out that the captain ended up getting fired a little bit into the investigation. She was the kind of captain that had been on many co-pilots' no-fly lists, and people were not happy with her, the way she presented herself, or the way I don't know. I don't want to get into it. But anyway, it was not the first time that they've had trouble with this particular pilot.
And I believe she took control from the first officer a lot lower than that. I mean, it was something like right before the flare.
Yeah, well, they said below 400 feet, so I'm not sure exactly where.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not pretty.
Nope.
Message for you, sir.
Hey there, Miami Rick. It's Pilot Pip here. Just wanted to let you know that I've been really enjoying the show lately. But if you want a piece of friendly advice, that Jeff guy, he doesn't really add much to the show. You'd probably be better off without him. He's holding you back, Rick. Only kidding, Captain Jeff. Come on. You know we love you, really.
Yeah.
So listen, I just wanted to add a contender for the great flying music. This is a song called Jet Pilot, and it was made by a guy from the New Zealand Air Force. And it's kind of a comedy song. It's a bit of a skit, a pastiche on the Top Gun movie. So you really need to watch the video on YouTube. It's very funny. But the song is actually a pretty good piece of music as well. So check it out, Jet Pilot. Go to YouTube and have a watch and a listen. But here's a little snippet for you.
Hello, young lady. You look quite nice today. And I look real good. You may come a little bit closer to me. You may smell my musk if you wish. But first of all, how rude of me. Let me introduce to you myself to you. My name is Pilot, I'm a pilot, that's what I do. And you can ask me lots of questions about that if you want to, oh yeah.
So there you go. Hope you enjoy that one. It's a really cool video. You got to check it out. Anyway, Captain Jeff, you know me. I would never be so bold as to come on to someone else's show and shamelessly self-promote my own podcast.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I wouldn't come on to your show and tell you that in the next episode of Plane Safety Podcast, I'm going to be taking an in-depth look at the Kegworth air disaster, which I know you guys have been talking about recently a bit. Now, it's a very fascinating incident, lots of technical and CRM-related issues. Very interesting topic indeed. So I'm going to be having a close look at that one. But I wouldn't come on to tell you that. That would be embarrassing, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I also wouldn't come on to tell you that the next episode will probably be out by the time you're listening to this, so go ahead and check it out. Okay, well, I think I've shamed myself enough now. So, Jeff, thanks for the great podcast. Take care. And to you as well, Rick, if you're there listening. Enjoy your contributions. The Jeff and Rick show, that has kind of a nice sound to it, I think. The Jeff and Rick show. Anyway, to the pair of you, take care, fly safe. Speak to you again soon.
I'm sorry, it's the Airline Pilot Guy show, and I've already got that domain and everything else, so it's not the Jeff and Rick show. Oh man, Pilot Pip, he's a piece of work. He didn't. I put the Monty Python thing at the beginning because when he sent the email, he said "message for you, sir," and so I'm assuming that that was a reference to that Monty Python Holy Grail bit where the guy gets the arrow in him with the message attached.
That was a nice touch, though.
Yeah. So I looked for a link to the video, Jet Pilot song video. He didn't include one in his. So if you're listening, Pip, send the link if this is a real video, or was that something that he just made up?
I don't know. Sounded kind of made up.
I was listening to it thinking, is that Pilot Pip singing? Let's see.
Myself to you. My name is Pilot. I'm a pilot. That's what I do. And you can ask me lots of questions about that if you want to. Oh yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Is this something that's a real song? I've never heard of that before. Have you?
Me neither. But it's an interesting song. I can actually see myself, going through the terminal with my carry-on, singing that.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah. Okay.
I can actually.
Okay. So I don't know. I'm not really sure how to go with this one, but except to say, Pilot Pip, we always appreciate your feedback, even if it's, and we always appreciate your very gentle, subtle plugs for your own show, Plane Safety Podcast. And you can find that at planesafetypodcast.com and on iTunes and wherever your fine aviation podcasts are served. So I told him, I said, I should have you on sometime as well. That'd be fun. So we'll see how that goes. Ken Kranz writes, Big Data Ken from Long Island. I saw this link to a 737 MAX commercial from Boeing. It doesn't say a lot about the plane, but gives some nice assembly line views of the process. And I'll have a link to that if you want to look at it. Very well done video by Boeing at their plant in, what was it, Renton, Washington?
Renton, Washington, yep.
There you go. Jacob.
That's when the 737s don't end up in the river by some, rail mishap.
They were on the way to Renton. Okay, excellent. Let's see. Jacob sent some audio feedback.
Hey, Captain Jeff. My name is Jacob. I've been a listener of you for about a year now, and I wanted to thank you for all the entertainment and education. So I had a question following the last episode where you were talking again, this has come up on and off, but you were talking again about one of these situations where an accident resulted from, and I'm probably using the wrong terms because I'm a computer engineer and know very little about aviation, but bear with me, where sensors slowly got iced up, the pilots were unaware of what was going on, the auto flight system disengaged, and the clueless pilots were left holding the bag. I was wondering if that's a situation that they will put you in a simulator. Will they, is it just takeoff, scenarios, engines going out and stuff, indications, abnormal indications surrounding the first little bit of your flight? Or will they also simulate you're up at cruise altitude and your autoflight system disengages on you with, strange readings that would be the result of icing or something like that? So I wondered if that was something that they emphasize that in different airlines, if you've ever seen something like that, if you think it would be a good idea. Anyway, thank you very much. God bless. Bye.
Thank you, Jacob. And, I wish that I had somebody on the show with me that was doing some instruction in a simulator that might be able to better answer this question.
Yeah, I wish I knew somebody too. I think I have his number here. Hang on. Hello?
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, do you know how to answer this question? Yeah, hang on a minute. All right, so basically, to be serious here, as we said last time on the last episode, one of the things that we do during recurrent training is called a loft, which is line oriented flight training, and you don't only want to practice your typical V1 cuts, engine failures right after takeoff, right at V1 or right before V1, all that stuff, or your engine fires after takeoff, because even though a lot of stuff can go wrong on the takeoff portion of the flight, a lot of stuff can also go wrong during the cruise portion of the flight. So now, particularly your question about sensors icing over and how to deal with that. There's a checklist which actually all pilots, at least at airline pilot, they need to know this checklist by heart, and that's called at least in my airplane, called the unreliable airspeed non-normal checklist. And basically what you need to do there is establish your wings level attitude, your pitch for level flight, and your thrust for level flight. And that's basically what you do. So as soon as you get an indication that your airspeed might be unreliable, or there might be something wrong with your sensors, then that's the checklist that you apply. Other things that can go wrong during the cruise portion of the flight, you have your rapid decompressions, your depressurizations. You can have your electrical failures. You can have your cargo fires. You can have all sorts of things going on. And as we said in the last episode, these are scenarios that are changed up over different training periods. Remember, at my airline, we go back to the simulator every 6 months. So in this 6-month period, we'll do this type of failure on the cruise portion of the flight. This 6-month period, we'll do another type of failure during the cruise portion of the flight. And during each simulator cycle, be it a regular 6-month training period or the annual check grade, you'll have some sort of cruise type failure or anomaly to have to deal with, so that you have one on the takeoff portion, one on the cruise portion, and then one on the approach portion, one on the landing portion. So it's all practice. It's all part of your recurrent training to keep you fresh and alert. So that's basically how that works.
Now, at my airline, we have these guides, instructor guides, and student instructor guide that kind of gives you an idea of what the things are going to be, or possibly going to be. So as far as encountering something that you weren't expecting at all, I remember early on flying in the airlines and being in the simulators, very little was known about what was going to happen to you. So most of everything that you encountered was unexpected or shocking. And in fact, a lot of times, the problem with that is that you were expecting something to go wrong, and sometimes you would initiate something that wasn't going wrong, and you would end up creating your own emergency or multiple emergencies. I'm sure that you've seen that, Rick, where somebody just overreacts and starts assuming that something is going on. And it might be just the simulator doing something weird.
You know what? I've seen that actually. It's funny you mentioned that, because the other day, what was it? Monday?
Mm-hmm.
We were doing a sim. And I promise I didn't touch anything. I didn't do anything. And the guy taking off, all of a sudden we were going down the runway, and we were doing a takeoff, and at about, I don't know, maybe about 120 knots, 130 knots. I think V1 was like 140. Right before we got to V1, the guy started wobbling on the runway. Like he started like dancing on the rudders, and I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, I didn't fail anything. I'm looking at the ICAS, engines are going fine. I'm like, I paused the sim. I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, did you fail an engine? I'm like, no. And wind's calm. So yeah, it's funny how you basically you're thinking, oh, something's gonna go wrong, something's gonna go wrong, something's gonna go wrong. So and you end up creating your own emergency.
Yeah.
So yeah, just
I don't know. As far as a as far as a person, a student that has to go through recurrent training, I want to know as much as I can and be as little surprised as possible. However, deep down inside, I'm thinking, you know what? We should start moving back to those times when you're not really fully briefed on what's going to happen. So it would be good to kind of see, really how you are going to react to something that you were completely not expecting.
That is exactly right. And, that's one of my concerns because, right now we have, we're all moving towards what's called AQP, Advanced Qualification Program, which basically means that you get an outline of everything that's going to happen in your training session, and you only train on a couple of maneuvers, and you basically have to do them by the book. And by the book, I mean you have to say word by word what's on that checklist, say it out loud, and do it as it's written on the book. And if you do the maneuver right, but you didn't say A, B, or C, as part of the maneuver, like if you didn't actually like say the words out loud, then the maneuver is not complete. So you have to go back and do it again, whatever the outcome of the maneuver is. And I mean, I'm not sure if I agree with that because what you want to do really is you want to evaluate what the reaction is going to be, because somebody's going to react different from, so I don't know.
I agree. So it's a two-edged sword. I can see the better training and better safety benefit of seeing things that you weren't expecting. On the other hand, we all want to do well and pass and get on with our real flying. And so the more we know, the better. I don't know. Again, it's a two-edged sword, I'd say. So kind of the way I feel about. Are you still there, Rick?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, because you were starting to break up a little bit. I want to make sure you're still with me. The call for a lot of people saying, video cameras in the cockpit. And, while I agree that for accident investigation and everything else, yeah, it would really be nice if we had some kind of video evidence of what's actually happening in the airplane, because sometimes pilots don't communicate what's happening, and investigators are just scratching their heads, trying to piece together what happened. On the other hand, I think that's an invasion of my privacy, and I do not want video cameras like constantly videotaping what's going on in the cockpit, So again, that's a two-edged sword. I see the argument for both sides on that kind of thing. So I don't know. I guess we had, but the bottom line is, Jacob, that we do other things besides just do things on takeoff, on landing. We'll usually see in the course of a recurrent training time, some issues regarding, aborted takeoffs and losing engines on takeoff, and then maybe some stalls or wind shear events, either taking off or landing, things that happen at cruise altitude. So it's, as Rick says, it's kind of you may not see all that stuff in one episode or one training session, but over time, over a pretty close period or short period of time, you'll see all of it. And so we don't just emphasize the stuff that's happening close to the ground. Oh, and finally, you know what? We've been going almost 3 hours now, and and I still have a bunch of feedback. Not a bunch, but some feedback to go. And I just wanted to play one that I just received yesterday, and it was from Tim Van Ram. You've heard of that guy, right?
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, I met him at our meetup in San Jose, and met a bunch of people at that one. That was a great one. They're all great, by the way. If you're listening and you've been to one, I didn't say it was. Even if it's just one person, like Abner meeting him up in Boston, etc. But the point here is that Tim sends me a lot of feedback, and this is one, and I really didn't understand why he was sending this to me. And the name of his email is Outside Lands San Francisco. Well, just the intro, my first time. And I'm thinking, well, looks like a interesting podcast and has a nice little logo and stuff. But I don't know what of interest this would be for me or the APG community. So right before the show, I thought, well, I'll just take a listen to see what's going on with this podcast. So here, let's take a listen.
Hi, I'm Tim Van Ram. You're listening to Outside Land San Francisco, the podcast of the Western Neighborhoods Project.
That was Tim Van Ram.
I'm Woody LaBounty.
And I'm David Gallagher.
David!
Yes, Woody!
That Tim Van Ram was like one of our most loyal listeners.
He was.
He even brought us a 6-pack of beer once.
12-pack of beer.
A 12-pack? Oh my
Come
gosh.
on.
Wait, somebody drank 6 of them before I got to it, I think.
No, I don't think so.
Well, thank you, Tim. I hope you're still listening because you just got on the podcast. And that's payback. That's payback for the beer. You famous.
Oh, boy. Do you want to get payback for listening?
No.
Okay.
David.
Yes,
Today,
Woody. Yes, I already did this part.
Today.
Yes.
The day.
Okay, and we fade out. But anyway, sounds like a very well-produced podcast about the San Francisco area and living in that area and history and that kind of thing. They have like 118 episodes. But anyway, the reason he sent that obviously is because we hear Tim Van Ram at the intro of this podcast. So that's really cool. So way to go, Tim. And what did he mean that he used to be the? I didn't get that. Are you not still listening to their show or what? I don't get that part of it. They kept using the term was instead of is. Anyway, so you know what? While I was just listening to that, I thought, you know what? It would be really cool, and I really did just think of it. If you're listening out there and you want to do an intro for the Airline Pilot Guy show, have at it. Just say something like, "Hi, this is listener Tim Van Ram," or "This is my name," whatever, and whatever you want to say. You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show or whatever. Don't say the episode number because then it's going to be too difficult for me to figure out which one to use. But anyway, so if you want to do that, maybe I could start the show that way in the future. I've probably just made a bunch of extra work for myself, but oh well, whatever.
That's a good idea, though.
Yeah, I should have thought that one through. Oh well, it's too late. I'll just edit this out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to edit it out. Okay, I have a lot of editing ahead of me on this show. We started off the show with a Google Hangout, which didn't last very long. Had some issues with bandwidth and audio quality and everything else. So hopefully I'll be able to piece all this together. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, hopefully it wasn't too awful to listen to. And it wasn't. Yes, it was a long show, and I know that some of you out there are probably pulling your hair out because it's so long, but most of you, I think, appreciate the longer format, and so that should make you happy. So if you want to learn more about the Airline Pilot Guy show, figure out other ways to consume it, like watching the video or subscribing via iTunes or Stitcher or what is it called? TuneIn Radio, etc., then just head over to airlinepilotguy.com, and there is a bunch of information about that. All the different links, video links, and article links that I was talking about in the show will be in the show notes, hopefully, if I remember them all. And again, you can find that at airlinepilotguy.com, and hopefully I'll have a shortcut link to this episode 164, so just go to airlinepilotguy.com/164. And finally, if you are interested again in the coffee fund, information about that, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. Rick, so you said you're just on day 1 or day 2 of a 7-day trip, so I hope that the rest of your trip is grand and you have a great time and you fly safely out there.
Thank you so much, Captain Jeff, for having me along once again. And I'm sorry about the audio problems here.
I don't think it was your fault, actually. I think it was from my end.
But it's interesting. I believe this is the first international APG.
Yeah, it is.
Ever.
It is. How about that? Let's see. That deserves a round of applause right there. I think it's our crowd, our audience. So so it was great. So thanks for tuning in and taking the time out. Especially, I know you're tired after flying all night, and hopefully we haven't cut into too much of your layover over there in beautiful
man,
Amsterdam.
Just happy to be here.
What time is it right now?
Always. It is 11:35 p.m. and I have to be up at. I can put in a good 9 hours of sleep.
Oh,
no
okay.
problem.
Well, thank you
I'll
for
be
the
good.
sacrifice. I do appreciate it. And as does everybody else in the Airline Pilot Guy community, as witnessed by many positive things said about you, and they're all right. So I guess until next time, you have anything else to say, Rick, before we sign off?
That is it, guys. Thank you so much for giving me this chance, and we'll see you guys again very, very soon.
All right, on the Jeff and Rick Show. No. So wishing you clear skies. What do I say? Unlimited visibility. Clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Boy, I should write that down. Take care, and God bless.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.
Good day.